Hello, hello. Welcome to The Solution. Tonight we have a very special guest. We have Nelson Media, right? Nelson Media?
Yep, that's correct.
Okay, good, because I know you changed your name. He is a licensed counselor, therapist. And so we're going to get into the psychology behind a lot of these women who undervalue their bodies, why they don't have good pee management. We're going to keep it PG here, good pee management, as you guys can kind of assume what that is. So we have a couple of videos for you guys that we want to play, but I'm going to go ahead and let the panel introduce themselves. As you know, I'll go ahead and introduce myself first. I'm B Taylor TV. As you know, I have my own channel, and then I am on the Lapeef sometimes. So
my name is Shan Monet, sometimes Shantae, and I am on a Chic Critique every Friday night at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time.
I am Inaz. This is Inaz across all platforms.
Hi, this is Gracie. Go by Curves for Life on all platforms.
How you doing? I'm Gary Nelson. I'm a licensed professional counselor, and my channel is I have two channels. One is Nelson Media, which is different skits and dialogues dealing with personality disorders and relationships, and the other is Before You Say I Do, which is all videos related to dating, mental health, and marriage.
And I am Mistaken, a member of Chic Critique, and Shan Monet said it all.
all right, thank you for coming on. I'm saying having me like I'm a guest. Okay. I know I haven't been here in a while. All right. Well, we're going to get into why a lot of women mismanage their bodies, undervalue their bodies. And this is going to start with this video. I'm going to go ahead and play it, and I want to get the panel's reaction.
I am ESTG's sister and I'm homeless. I have 5 kids. I don't have any support.
That was trending on Twitter. A lot of people kept replying saying she has bad pee management. I'll start with Shan Monet.
For whose sister is she?
It's a rapper sister. Basically, she's like, how is my brother a rapper and I'm struggling with my 5 children? He's not here to help me.
I could look at it 2 ways, I suppose. I mean, she has 5 kids, so my question is, where are the fathers of the children? Because really that is the responsibility. Those are responsible parties, the mom and the dad. But on the other side, I would assume that their family is not that close knit, or something may have happened, a rift or something, because I know just for my family, they would have definitely stepped in. But if we're talking about as far as I guess I would have to have more information as far as the children are concerned. Like, were these kids, do they have the same father? Were they born within a relationship? It's just so many unknown variables. But if you are unable to take care of yourself and your children, then maybe you should have not, been so what's the word, careless with having children, so many kids, I suppose. Well, Michael Jackson say, if you can't feed the baby, then don't have a baby.
Okay, we will go with Inaz.
Yeah, I think I'd have to agree with Shan. There's definitely some points of context that are missing. I think my assumption, similar to Shan's, would be that the family isn't close knit, but for a different reason. Not necessarily that they wouldn't help out, because not all families helpful, even if they have the means. But a lot of broken families tend to foster children that are a little bit more reckless about their own well-being, and tend to make decisions that are not in their own best interest, right? I think a lot of times people are taught that children are this fountain of endless love. And so some people have more children to fill a void that belongs to somebody else. So I'd assume that this is probably learned behavior, which is maybe why she's in the situation where she's not able to care for her children.
Let's go with Miss Taken because I wanna save Nelson for last.
I don't think that she should have the expectation that it's her brother's responsibility to take care of the problems that she created, so to speak. And not to say that the kids are the problem, but the decisions that she made is the problem. And to assume that because he may have the means, just because he's a rapper, doesn't necessarily mean that he has the means to take care of her kids. He could just be getting put on just now, you know. But even if he did have it, I don't think it should be her expectation that it is his responsibility to take care of her and her children. The other question, or what I'm thinking, is at what point did she realize that the decision making wasn't beneficial to her or the children that she already had before she got to child number 5? So that's something like we don't know the context of that, but at some point we know that birth control was available before kid 1. So after kid 1, what happened? You know what I'm saying? So those are some things that I would think about.
Okay, and Curves for Life.
So I feel like there's a lot to unpack here. And me going to speak on this topic, not knowing all of her details and what her background is and things of that nature. But I mean, at some point, you have to just take responsibility for the decisions you've made. And it's nobody's responsibility to take care of your children except for you and that other partner. And it just worries me when women seem to keep making the same type of, I'm not going to call it a mistake, but making the same decision over and over again, knowing that they couldn't handle it to begin with. Like when I used to work at a call center, like when I was 24, and I used to sit right next to this girl, and she had 4 kids. We were the same age. We were both 24, and she had 4 kids. And for the life of me, I couldn't understand. I was thinking like, dang girl, like how could you even handle that? And I had 1 kid, still do. But I'm just thinking I couldn't imagine what my life would look like that, like with that many kids. And I just feel like it's just not a good decision to make, because what's their quality of life like when you start to have that many kids? You still have to work, and you know, we go through our own mental situations when having a kid, when dealing with kids. So I just feel like, you know, you should just stop, be more preventative, and you should never let it go that far, or you shouldn't expect people to pick up your slack. If you have a family, like I have a family who my mom helps me out. She'll watch my son when I need her, but not everybody has that. So if you just keep making these decisions knowing you don't have no backup, you're not with the men who are going to stay around, or you're not, you know, you don't have a good family who's going to have your back, then like, what are you doing? You're setting yourself up for failure. So that's all.
Everybody go, because I wanted to add before the therapist came in. I just wanted to. I wonder what was the point in making that, you know, announcement in front of, you know, the world per se. If he's a rapper, he's an entertainer. You can't place what you've done on him. Try to tarnish his name because of your decisions. I don't understand what she was trying to
looking
get.
for help, a GoFundMe. That's what
I think she was trying to shame him as well.
Yeah, I
like,
think it
publicly.
seemed like a shame tactic. And I'm like, those kids and you aren't his responsibility. Obviously, if my brother makes it, I would, you know, hope. But it's not an obligation. It's just, you know, I don't know.
So best for last, Nelson, what was your observation about this video?
To be honest, this really doesn't have any kind of context to it at all. So I'm just thinking in terms of, if this person came into my office, what would be some of like my immediate thoughts or the questions that I would have in my head before we even got into it is, how many different baby fathers does she have? You know, that's kind of really important. How far apart were the children born? So is she just popping them out? Like, what is her process to even getting pregnant? Is she dating people she has in one night stands? Like, I would want to know her whole sexual history. What else would I want to know? I would want to know her mindset around. So we the same thing that we both commend and condemn a lot of Black women for is what I started thinking about. Black women, we give them a lot of credit. We give y'all a lot of credit for being able to hustle, being able to do what you got to do to take care of your family. So whether that is finding the right government programs to help you, whether it is bouncing between your parents for babysitting, your cousins, everything that you have to do in order to be able to work, take care, and feed your kid. We give y'all credit and we condemn y'all for that. So why is it that she is now coming and presenting as a complete victim? So I would really be curious as to that, and why she believes that there's an obligation for her brother to do anything for her, because in all honesty, she more than likely has some type of support in place. But because he is a rapper, she's going to have some type of expectation that this is what support is going to look like. So maybe she believes that she's due a little bit more because she's famous by association. So maybe she believes she should be up inside of a 6-bedroom house and all the bills be taken care of. So anything that doesn't look like that, she's not going to have an appreciation for. Maybe her parents are in the picture and doing everything they can too, but she still looks at it like she has nothing. So I would be thinking about kind of like all of those things would be circling in my head as I'm like talking to her.
So, okay, she has 5 children as a single mother. The question comes into play that goes in my head is why so many Black men think that, Black women mismanage our wombs, that we carelessly birth out babies, the single motherhood rate. Are Black women not valuing their wombs, and is that a true thing? And why so many Black men go so hard on Black women about becoming a single mother? They hold the women more accountable than the men that's also participating.
Is that to me or is that to the panel?
I feel like that was to Nelson. I'm like, tell us.
So when you say undervalue in their bodies, are you specifically talking about the womb, or are you talking about just bodies in general?
I mean, both, to be honest. All of it, yeah. Like, they literally hate single mothers. It makes them so angry. It doesn't matter what situation happened, unless you were married, you're ruining the community.
I think that was a 2-part question.
Yes.
Okay. All right. So what's part one?
Sorry, Nelson.
What's part one of the question?
Part one would be, are Black women careless with our wombs?
Yes and no. So yes, and in the sense that y'all get pregnant a lot and very quickly, because it doesn't take much for you to fall in love. I mean, that is what it is. But the other part of it is, I can understand the reasons why you get pregnant, because one, you fall in love with somebody, you envision having a family, but a lot of times women do this before understanding what love looks like. And for men, a lot of times it's the same exact thing. So you're quicker to have a baby because sometimes you think that this is what's going to cause you to keep a man. 2, because you want that unconditional love from a child. And 3, because that's kind of is used as a chip sometimes to, if you're on the rocks inside of your relationship and you feel like things aren't going the way that you think it should go, sometimes there's this mentality that if I have a child, that will cause the person that I'm with to up their commitment level. And now they're going to want to do things for the sake of the family, when that's not necessarily the case anymore, especially when with most of us growing up in dysfunctional families. So without us knowing each other's background and what our individual families look like, and what even having a child means to this particular person, a lot of women, they jump into relationships before understanding all of these things, these foundational things, and then they get left high and dry when, you know, they break up. Or, and not saying that, you know, the men that's just leaving them, because it's both sides. Is sometimes it's women feeling like they deserve more and they leave, and sometimes it's men feeling like she's, you know, aggravating me, or I'm not ready for this, and they take off. So it's there's a lot of nuances to it. So I couldn't say either way that you're like that you're all the way mismanaging it, and that, you know, you're doing well for yourself. So it's multifaceted.
Can I say one thing? I also think that it has become normalized to be overly sexual and having children out of wedlock. And so I think it doesn't have as much of a stigma attached to it until you get into multiple births with multiple baby daddies. Like you haven't, like in her case, I don't know if she has multiple baby daddies, but you have 5 kids, right? And you're single and you're not married. But I think it's more acceptable in this generation, well, in this era in time, where if you have 1 kid out of wedlock, maybe 2, then, you know, is kind of normalized. And so I do think when society normalizes certain behavior that isn't good for us, we tell ourselves that is okay.
So I'm sorry. You can go first. Well, I'm taking it from different angles. Okay. So yes, she has mismanaged her reproductive system. Absolutely. But in the grand scheme of things, I think somebody was talking. It could have been mistaken. Somebody was in it dawned on me that women were made to reproduce, and what's really happening here is people are not marrying, because had this woman done the right order, where she got married at a decent age, then ideally these kids would have been a product of a household with 2 parents. But because marriage is being taken out of the equation and is been pushed to the 30s and 40s, these women are still having sex, men are still having sex, and then voila, kids are being born. So when we take marriage out of the equation and not being married the normal, pretty much like everybody else, then it's leaving this loophole where these people, it's more room for kids out of wedlock, because people are going to have sex. They just are. And we can say, oh, why isn't she on birth control, or why isn't she having an abortion? All of these things are unnatural things. Okay, what's natural is reproducing. What's natural is mating, being married. That's quote unquote natural, the norm. So when you take one variable out of the equation, it just screws everything else up.
Yeah, like people are saying in the comments, that Kiki Palmer just announced her pregnancy. I think she's around my age, or so. She's like 30, 31. And she just announced her pregnancy, and everyone was cheering her on, congratulating her, so excited. She is not married, but it seems like she's having a baby with her boyfriend. It has become normalized, like, well, at least he's around. But, I think a lot of people are like, but for how long? Because during that pregnancy and after that baby, you're not guaranteed security from that. Why is it so many women are like, where did we learn that? I feel like a lot of women don't have, especially Black women, we don't have boundaries when it comes to sex.
Can I just add a stat in there to go along with that? Just keep in mind too, when what I read, we did stats on this last week. What I read is 60% of kids are born into 2 parents cohabitating. They may not be married, but there is unwedlock birth, but they are living together. And that was at 60%, the last article that I read. So yes, going back to what he was saying, it may be in a fantasy, oh, we're living like we are in a relationship, we're just not married. And just like you said, you know, those relationships, how long is he gonna be here? Because just because you're together right now and you're not married, it's like an easy way out. We don't know how long he's
I
gonna
mean,
be.
is it a difference? Because if you're cohabitating and raising the children together,
No, because most of them it starts out that way, but it doesn't. The problem is that it's not lasting.
And can I
But
can I say this too? I think that part of a huge marriage is a huge part of the equation. And I think we've done ourselves a disservice by really perverting the meaning of marriage. Because I hear two like competing ideals. One that you marry for love, and we end up marrying because we have a feeling of love, not understanding that that feeling is going to pass. It's not going to remain the same forever. And two, I hear a lot of people say that marriage is a business. So nobody really, I don't think we ever really came to the understanding that love is unity, is making a commitment that I am going to take the specific actions that entail loving you, that I'm going to always try to my best to be patient with you. I'm always going to try to be humble. I'm not going to envy others. I'm going to persevere with you. All of those qualities that make up the action of loving someone. When you marry somebody, you are committing to doing that for as long as you live or as long as she lives. And because we've lost that meaning of it, now that's why there's a lot of cohabitating. That's why even inside of a lot of marriages, a marriage you just throw it away when you're done with it. Yeah. That's why Tia Mowry would say she had a successful marriage. It's delusion. It's pure delusion.
Wow. Okay. So I like that perspective. I don't think a lot of us were taught what is marriage, because you hear so many women, see their parents married. They're like, oh, that was so toxic. They end up getting a divorce. What matters about it anyway? It's just a piece of paper. Like, what do you have to say about those people that just say, like, it's just a piece of paper? Like, if we're paying bills together, living together, having children together, we're basically married. We just don't have the paper. What do you have to say about that?
Well, it is just a piece of paper when you look at the legal aspect of it. But with the cohabitating, to be able to just say what's the difference, you have to understand the symbolic nature of it. You are actually making a vow to a person that used to mean something. It doesn't mean anything really anymore, but before, to make a vow before God that you are going to be with this person and you're going to love them, that carried really heavy consequences for a community that was deeply Christian. So now that it's lost that weight, and now that the church has lost a lot of power and they're off preaching on some other stuff, and families are just getting together and breaking apart, and it's cool to have have multiple baby fathers. Like, we are just in a completely sunken state. So it's hard to find people that still have those initial values. And that's why I think, especially for a lot of young people, when they're getting together and getting married, you're really finding a gem if you can find a person that has those values still inside of them, of how they want to proceed inside of a marriage and what it should look like. And we really just have to get away from our modern culture to kind of refine that.
If I can just add on to that, because I love what you said, Nelson. And I think that whole concept of vows, I think people don't understand the magnitude of that, right? We talk about the wedding and it's supposed to be this great celebration, and we show off the dress, and everybody kind of goes home. But the concept of a vow is to make these promises not just before God, but in front of people who are going to support the success of that marriage, right? That is truly the value of a vow. And that's what makes it more significant than a promise, right? But But I think our society's shifted to being so individualistic that, if I just make these promises to you and I do it in private and I'm not doing it publicly to people who are going to hold me accountable to that, well then I can skirt around gaslighting or bending the rules a little bit, or I didn't say that, you know what I mean? And I think when we understand the value of what things are, we stop trying to diminish them and kind of use different words to try to mean the same thing. And I think that happens a lot. There's so much wordplay that happens in these conversations that we conflate ideas that don't actually belong together. And we start to see, like, how many times have we heard the conversation of like, well, we're basically married. Well, what does that mean if we're really valuing marriage, right? Oh, well, I said these vows. Well, what does that mean if you just, did it at the courthouse with, legal witnesses and not people who genuinely want to see your marriage succeed? Having children, right? What does that mean to bring them into this world as two people and to actually have to take care of people who cannot take care of themselves if you don't understand what the value of that is, right? And I think the moment we start to actually use the words that are intended for certain things, instead of trying to remix the story and what it's supposed to look like, the conversation starts to look a little bit differently.
I mean, I think marriage rate also went down when people have realized that, well, whatever stats were out there, we were always told that your marriage is likely to fail if you're poor. So don't marry poor. So I think a lot of men and women are saying, okay, I need to, wait until he's in this financial space. And the man is like, I don't want to get married until I'm financially stable because, I got to focus on this. And then you get a baby in between that. That's just like, where a lot of couples are like, you know what, let's bring a baby in this situation because we're going to get married anyway. We're going to be together anyway. I think a lot of women, when they do get pregnant, I'm not going to say, I'm not going to say all, but I'm going to say a lot of women, when they do get pregnant, they do expect to marry that person that they're with. They do expect to be with that person forever. And that's their forever person. And they're like, you know what, I'm going to have a baby. Then you got the other women who are like, well, I don't know who the dad is, or this was a one night stand, or, I'm just messing with my sneaky link and get pregnant by my sneaky link and carry the baby through. I don't understand women like that just get pregnant, and like, what outcomes do you think is going to happen, and why are they so comfortable bringing in those type of babies from situations that they were never in a real relationship with this person?
I
So
was
be
gonna
Taylor.
say, I was going to say that when people were talking about cohabitating and the outcomes, we also look at the impact that it has on the children. And I remember reading something before, I think it's something that we did on She Critique, and we were looking at stats and stuff. And it was just saying like there's a hierarchy of the outcome on children. So the hierarchy is marriage has the best outcomes for children. Then the cohabitating has the next best, and then of course if you single, it has the most impact on children. And so it was saying things like when you are cohabitating, the likelihood of it ending up in marriage is less, right?
That's true.
And then the likelihood too of like when it was looking at marriage itself, it was saying that typically married couples earn higher incomes. They're typically more educated, have those resources. So all of those things are going to be beneficial to the children within the confinements of a marriage versus just cohabitating. So the end goal should always end up being a marriage, especially when children are involved.
So I wanted to, I love that mistaken. And B Taylor, to kind of answer your question in a slightly different way. I blame shotgun weddings, because when we were a community, if a man were to get a woman pregnant, he was dragged out. He was told he had to marry her. If he didn't have a job, somebody in the family gave him a job, and they were forced to be a family.
Yeah.
And that tradition of like getting pregnant and still wanting that man to take accountability happened. But as community fell apart, nobody was holding these men accountable and forcing, we're going to use the word, right? We're forcing that man to uphold family, right?
I
And
agree.
so we're seeing this learned behavior continue as society has shifted away from community into individualism.
Mhm.
But the things that some people were taught is still moving forward.
Yeah, because I think the women are being not forced to, but they're being pushed to take birth control, abortions. Men are like, oh, well, get an abortion, get on birth control. They're downing all these things on women to take accountability. But I do think shotgun wedding probably, I mean, did it ever work? I feel like it did work because the man was forced to take responsibility. What do you think, Nelson? Because a lot of Black men want to shame single mothers. They feel like if they bring shaming back, then that will prevent single motherhood. But I think if we bring back shotgun weddings where you are forced to marry that woman that you have a child with, that would make men also be more disciplined as well, where they're not shooting up the club with different women. What do you think about that?
I think shotgun weddings were good for a time. And it might still have a purpose now, honestly, just because there needs to be something for Black men to establish discipline and understand what accountability looks like. So I do think that there needs to be something in place that you do need to, this is what it's going to look like for you to take care of your kids. Maybe it doesn't necessarily have to be you have to marry this woman now, but there needs to be something in place where you have to be responsible for your kids. And I'm not even just talking about
Child support?
financial. No, that's
Okay.
because honestly, that's a bad thing. A lot of times when women have kids, for some reason, the power dynamic shifts to where now the woman is telling the man, do this for the child. The baby needs this. The baby needs that. You need to do this. We need to go to take the kid to the park as a family. Like, rather than the man is leading with how you want the family to move. How do you want things to go? Now it's just you give the money and I decide what it is, what it is that we're going to do. We're going to decide what it's going to look like for you to be a father. And I think a lot of the power has been taken away from men to even be able to step up in the first place to be able to care for the kid. And I also think that for where men need to be held accountable, women need to be held accountable too, because they need to understand what it looks like to vet a man. If this man is ready for marriage, if he's ready for a serious relationship, rather than being easily sweet talked. Like, we need to teach them what game looks like, and to stay away from people that run game, because game is nothing but manipulation. So that's intentional stuff that I think we have to do as a community with our children and our children's children.
Man, go ahead, Chen Monet.
Well, I once I think about things, I think that I think men do have power. Their power is marriage. That's their power. I think it's a checks and balance. Men have the power over marriage. And so too, if you want full control over a household, you have to be the man of the household. And that's how you get your power. Get married. I think that everything is so crazy how everything is put in place to check the other one, and everybody gets mad at the power that the other one has. And instead of just accepting their power and using their power for their advantage. You understand? So that to me is a big, she has the power over the kid. You have the power over the household if you want to accept that power, and it was something else about the shotgun wedding. What I saw in the census report, and I try to find it in between time, was I do believe shotgun weddings still occur. They're not considered shotgun weddings, but I've noticed that a lot of women who are of other races, their kid is conceived out of wedlock, but because and there's actually a census report in the report that state that, however, they marry before the second child is born or before birth. So I don't know. I don't know if they're collecting this information maybe at the doctor's appointment. Are you married? Blah, 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 blah. But then when the birth actually occurs, the marriage has taken place. But there are, I don't know how they're calling it, but there are groups of women, and I'll try to find that are getting married in between times. So it does not look like the child is being born out of wedlock.
Yeah, people actually
We're just not doing it.
Yeah, people actually cared about their seed being a bastard. Now it's like, that was the thing. You would call them illegitimate kids or bastard. Is that the correct term? Kids that's born from a person that's non-married. That was like a shameful thing for men and women. It's like you didn't want to have your son, your firstborn son, to be born and being called a bastard, right? That was like a shameful thing. So men also honored that and married. I know plenty of women they got married and I was like, oh wow, that was quick. And the next thing you know, a baby came out like a few months later. I was like, oh, I was like, a friend of mine literally just did that. I was like, oh my God, I didn't even know. They kept it under wraps until she was at the end of her pregnancy. They was well off married and everything. The family was involved. I just feel like what's going on, Nelson? What's going on with our community? Why are we so messed up?
Nelson's like, I ain't got the answer for that. Y'all all screwed.
I'd be rich if I had the answer for that. I mean, but I still believe that we have a lot of hope for our community with our young people, not the adults. The adults, we're done. There's no hope at all for us. But starting to teach our kids like the foundational elements that they need to have to be successful, getting them away from like core. I'm big on core values. So, and for some reason in our community, our core values are money, power, and respect. Everything that we do is revolving around that, and it's the most toxic and destructive thing that has happened to our community. Mm-hmm. We need to throw that out the window, bring back integrity, humility, wisdom, and knowledge,
character,
love, all of the character traits, because we're raising our kids to have personality disorders. I mean, honestly, when you look at it, look how we treat our young boys when they're growing up. You're holding them as a baby and you're saying, mama's little man. Oh, he's going to get all the girls. He's going to be heartbreaking everybody. Like, we say the most random things and do the most random things, like setting them apart and complaining when they're not starting on their football or basketball team. We're always saying our child has to be the best, has to be the smartest. Our children realize that. And so now they grow up thinking, this is how I got to be. I'm better than everybody else. If I'm not better than everybody else, then there's something wrong with me. We're raising our kids to have bad character. And it's showing in when they grow up and they have children, just a revolving loop of dysfunction.
So going back to like boundaries, because when I talk to women who are single moms, and I asked them they're just like, I don't know. I just, there was no boundary. It's like, they feel like if they was to tell him, no, we have to use protection all the time, then that's kind of not taking them to the next level of intimacy or whatever, being closer with that person. I would hear women say that. So it's just like, a lot of women probably, or a guy, I remember hearing this back in college where guys basically would brag about shooting up the club. And I'm like, why is that a thing? Like, y'all know babies come from that? Like, what? Like, and so women don't, like, I'll say one of my friends got pregnant because her boyfriend did that. And she told him no, and he did it anyway. And she ended up getting pregnant from it. And she's just like, yeah, well, it is what it is. Like, and I'm like, where was the boundaries in that? You know, where was the boundaries? And I hear that so many times when women are not creating these boundaries within sex.
Can I say something real quick?
Mhm.
I feel like, and I could be wrong, but I feel like we're not having the proper conversations with our children, because I feel like a lot of these conversations, like they're very important, and maybe other races have these more serious talks, and sometimes parents don't have these conversations with the kids, so you're just left doing what you're doing, having a good time, and you're left with the result of whatever happens, whether that's STD, pregnancy, whatever the case may be, and now you're dealing with it, and these are conversations that are not have had. Like, even me personally, like my mom growing up, my mom didn't really care to talk about sex. Like, she was just like, she was really kind of weird about it. But my dad, he was open to teaching me and my sisters about what sex was and the proper like, you know, we were really taught to not have sex until marriage, but nevertheless, like, these are conversations that do need to be had. And if you're not having those conversations, what are people left to do? So that's just my 2 cents.
No, you're right. You're right. Because I think when I grew up in a very strict household, and you know, we could not talk about sex. We couldn't look at sex. It's like, what sex? That doesn't exist. Like, that's nothing of your imagination you should even think about. I remember when I asked my grandmother, "What's a virgin?" She was like, "Where did you learn that? Where did you learn that?" Like, she was like mad at me, and I'm like, Disney said she was still a virgin, and then, like, you know, and she wouldn't even have the discussion with me on what that was.
Exactly.
It was like, stay away from boys, they're bad.
Yeah.
Focus on your schoolwork.
That was the discussion.
Yeah, like, well, it was like, don't focus, like, but like, they didn't talk about sex. They just, even when I was younger, I saw a 16-year-old pregnant. I go, oh, Mama, the child is pregnant. Like, I didn't know children can have babies. And she, like, it was the first, I didn't know, like, you could be a child and have a child. And I said that to her. She goes, yeah, well, it happens. Instead of explaining to me, like, how it happened, how to avoid that happening, that was never talked about. And I think a lot of young girls, you know, they don't learn about sex until a hot boy is whispering in their ear and giving them attention about it.
And then you're learning it from you're learning it all wrong.
You're learning it from the streets.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
There definitely needs to be more conversation that needs to be had, and parents need to make their children feel comfortable having these conversations, because regardless of whether it makes you feel uncomfortable, these things are going to come out one day anywhere. They're going to be learning in middle school. They're going to be trying something freaky with a little boy who's like, oh, do this. You know what I mean? And now you do have to have the conversation, because you got a phone call saying that your daughter was doing XYZ in the locker room, you know? So, yeah.
I wanted to, you know, I think here again, I think that, you know, men and women are very different, and that's and when it comes to sex, I think I still think the same thing. Women and men are different when it comes to sex. And so I think that it needs to be pushed that women should not be having sex with men who are not their husbands. I think that is also an issue. Why buy the cow when you can get the milk free? So if you're giving him sex, imagine if every woman were to close their leg, these men will be marrying. Trust me when I say, okay, because they just cannot, they don't want to. And so I think that we need to start, I mean, I get it, the conversation being, have safe sex or this, and this. But I think the conversation should be, hey, you should not be having sex. You should value your vagina, and you should not be having sex with a man who does not want to be responsible for you through marriage.
Is that realistic?
Absolutely. No. It's not realistic for this generation. But it is realistic. You know why? Because we don't get the same thing out of the stop front. You don't get the same satisfaction. What kind of satisfaction do you get out of a man sleeping with you and then leaving? Nothing.
Oh yeah.
You're not doing your part.
But how many women
you're not winning.
How many women are actually going to practice that? I'm going to keep myself.
Well, you're going to always have women who are those women. That has been the beginning of time.
But that's also influencing
we're talking about the wives. We're not talking about promiscuous, because those women, there's nothing we can do.
Those women are influencing the young girls. I remember in high school, it was not cool to be a virgin. Literally, I was scared to even say I was a virgin, because another girl got made fun of. She was like made fun of. She wasn't invited to nothing. Like all the girls that were out there hot in their pants, they're like, yeah, we're not gonna invite her because she's such a virgin. Like, she's so scary. Like, we don't want to be around that. And so I was like, ooh, let me not tell her.
Yeah, the generations have changed because back in those days, girls, even if they were having sex, yeah, even if they were having sex, they lied about it because back then it wasn't something that was glorified. So the generation and outlook on sex has changed. So therefore, the behavior has changed. But one of the questions that I did have for Nelson is, we are hearing a lot in these spaces, well, bring shame back, right? Make I guess certain behaviors shameful. My question to you is, does shame work in changing behavior? Just because from my understanding, there's a difference between shame and conviction. And typically when you have conviction, that helps with changing the behavior, whereas shame can create more negative outcomes. So I just kind of wanted to know your opinion on, do shame and behavior work in changing the behavior?
So I'm in favor of shame, actually, because there's shame and there's also toxic shame. So shame, I look at it as that can be a righteous thing. That can be when you know you've done something wrong and somebody else points it out to you, you feel ashamed. And that shame lasts for a certain amount of time, and then you pick yourself up and you dust yourself off and you go and strive to be better. That if you take away the shame part of that, then you're going to do something wrong. You're not going to be held accountable for it. There's no repercussion to it. So you're more likely to repeat the same behavior. The shame becomes a lot more toxic when people start trying to define your character based off of it. And people try to say, you're no longer going to be good for the rest of your life. That's why I'm not in favor of the way that we approach dealing with people that cheated, because we've been placing this label on them that they're no longer a good man. And what's the purpose of, like, okay, fixing the problem if now, out of all these years that we've been together and we've been married or whatever, now I make this one bad decision and that defines the rest of my entire existence. So I feel like shame has good places, but the way that we, of course, in our community, the way we really utilize shame is in that very toxic way.
I guess that's what I was getting at, because a lot of times what I see or hear is that, shame is a negative emotion, that not negative emotion, but in terms of action that attacks the person. You know what I'm saying? And just from my understanding of the way that works, when somebody keeps telling you you're bad, right?
Yeah.
That typically the behavior begin to match what people say, because you begin to see yourself as
just
bad.
a baby mama anyway.
And so then it's like, well, forget it. I'm already bad. I'm not, worthy. I'm not this. I'm not that. And then you continue the bad behavior. So what is a healthy way, I guess, to, if we're going to use the word shame, what is a healthy way to do that? So a person could see that there's a point in redemption. Because in these spaces, when you hear guys talk, oh, well, you already had a baby and now you're trying to close your legs and not have sex. Once you have a kid with somebody, you can't go back to not having sex. It's not like you're a virgin. You got to give it to them. You know what I'm saying? So
give it out for free.
Right. So for me, what's a good way, or the way that we can use shame to truly change the behavior in a positive way?
Just off the top of my head, I would think that separating the behavior from the character attachment would be a big thing to do. A lot of times we do attach, something negative happens, we make a judgment on this person's character instead of making that type of character judgment after a distinct pattern of something happening. So once we come across somebody and we're noticing this type of behavior, talk to them in a way that it makes them understand that this is not an indictment on you. I just don't like this thing that you did. And I know you can do better than that. Not you can be better than that, but you can do. Just give them don't give a person a one-shot deal. Like this one thing defines your existence. But that's way easier said than done. Look at just happened with Kyrie Irving. Like this is the way our society is kind of now built. Is we'll find text messages or screenshots from 20 years ago and use it against you, no matter what you've done up into your life to define who you are now. Right. That's kind of the way we're made up now. Mm-hmm. And we have to get away from that. And I'm not sure as a community what we can do to all get on the same page, because we're always looking for a savior. We're always looking for somebody to look to guide us and do these things. And the people that have really been appointed as the people that are really supposed to be like the best in our community, our best and brightest, are the most corrupt, the worst character having people that we can have. We have, who do we have? We have Jamal, something, that pastor that decides he wants to impregnate all these different women. We have Al Sharpton, who is a corrupt politician. We have LeBron James, who is a narcissist. Everybody that's lifted up in our community have very distinct negative aspects to their character, and we're being taught that this is what it looks like to be successful. We need to redefine our heroes.
So this just crossed my mind. I feel like if you are a young woman with no kids, you didn't get like your parents didn't talk to you about instilling values. You may deal with some self-esteem issues, and now you're out here in the dating world, right? What advice would you give this young woman? Because I feel like a lot of women who become single mothers are women with low self-esteem, because they don't know their value. They don't value their body. They don't protect themselves because they are giving something to a man to show their loyalty, worth, or love, because they don't know how to show it in a more healthy way. So what would you say for a young woman who's probably lost, who's probably has low self-esteem, has no self-worth, and how does she handle herself out in the world with men?
I'm a real big proponent of studying men, studying the way we think, studying the way we behave, and the true things that we actually evaluate women on. Because even inside of a young men, our minds, you mentioned boundaries earlier, and for men, a lot of times having sex without a condom is actually important, because that condom represents a barrier in relationship.
Yep.
So there's a whole lot stronger of a connection when she lets me go in raw.
Thank you for saying that.
And she lets me climax inside of her. With that, even when you're just getting to know a young lady, for a lot of men, I'm going to try my best to have sex with her as quick as I can, because that's the easiest way for me to determine if she actually has feelings for me. Because I know once she gives her body up that I have her. So a lot of times that is the first thing that we go for. So understanding, I think for a lot of young women need to understand that inside of a lot of men, and understand when they're getting game ran on them, because there are so many good young men out there that do not think like that really take the time and sit and talk with you and want to learn about you and are ambitious and things like that, but they get overlooked because they're missing that maybe they're short, maybe they're a little chubby. We focus so much on the outward appearance before actually investing inside the character. Those things need to be reversed, and I think there's actually a lot of good things happening now inside of schools, where there's programs that are being introduced to our kids that are teaching them these things that are providing them with counseling and different types of services, I think that as a community, we need to learn what these programs are and start investing in them as our own communities, because anywhere else, these corporations and outside entities that are giving services to our kids, they are not looking for, they're not looking out for their best interest. We have to decide collectively as a community what's in our best interest and then implement it ourselves.
That's good. I'm glad you brought up the whole like barrier thing, because I felt like I was kind of like, am I making sense when I was saying how women have to prove themselves? Like, look, I'm taking the barrier away. Look, I'll allow you to do this, because a lot of women feel like if they take the barrier away, that's showing the man that we're closer. I love you. I trust you with everything in my body, because I'm allowing you to be inside of me unprotected. And a lot of women, oh my God, this is another one I've heard before, where a woman was like, I got pregnant by him and he don't want the baby and he's mad. But if he didn't want to get me pregnant, why would he come inside of me? So there's a lot of women who feel like,
Because it feels amazing. I mean, that's some of these things are kind of obvious. Like,
yeah, but listen to this is what a lot of women really think. Like, I understand from a male's perspective, but you guys got to hear what women think.
Women think that if a man is coming inside of them, you're basically telling us you want us to have your baby, you want us to be your wife, you want to be connected to us forever and ever. That is what men are telling women. Well, that's how we're translating that.
I'm sorry. Can I just say one thing? I think that maybe some women,
not every woman, but a lot of women do think like that.
I think a lot of women, I think the opposite. I think a lot of women are, and I don't want to say like men in that regard, but what I mean is just being irresponsible. A lot of times it's about getting caught up in a moment. You hot, you heavy, everything is feeling good, and then it's just like, F it.
I disagree.
You got married so young, so you haven't been out in these streets to know what women are actually thinking. Like, you're just taking it from like it's irresponsible. Yes, it's irresponsible, but this is the conversations I hear women say. Well, if he didn't want to have a baby with me, why was he always coming inside of me? So yeah.
And I think too, just like there are women who don't mind having sex casually, they just throw it out. Yes, to them, it doesn't mean anything. It has no meaning to it. Yeah. But there's some women who they have sex, they don't have it, just everybody, and then they find that one person, and then they trust that guy to be, because those women do exist as well. And they trust that guy, and they're thinking, oh, well, because I've even heard it from friends, you know what I'm saying? Like, oh, girl, he's not used to, and they feel like that means something.
They mean that
they're men, because we have these spaces now, we hear it doesn't, but there are women.
The example that we just had with the woman with the 5 kids, right? Mm-hmm. So, I mean, I don't know if all her kids are by the same father or not, but whether it was or it wasn't, at what point did she get the message?
Right. No, we're not disagreeing with you. We're saying that there are women who sleep like that, but to say that they're a majority, yeah, there are we call them slut. There's women who just the JJ for everybody. We hear them on the panel. Don't take it. We can't close our legs. It ain't gonna happen because we feel it too. We like sex just as much as you. You know, those are those women. Okay, but we know there are other women who value their vaginas. Yeah, they do. And so we can't say that they're all these women. Though there are different types of women. We understand that there are women who just don't care, but there are also women who are in these long-term relationships, they think that it means something. They feel like if he's not using a condom, that means something, and it ends up getting them in trouble.
So I think women need to understand this about a lot of men, is the same way that y'all are having all these thoughts in your mind when he's coming inside of you about being a family and getting married and all this planning you're doing in your head. For a lot of men, we are also having a lot of plans in our mind at that time when we are doing that. okay, I got to run over to CVS and get a Plan B pill. It's going to cost me about $50. Is like we do think about that. Just to, you know, it happens.
Do men
Or-
not
I have
know
a question.
that
No, I
when
have a
you
question
take?
real quick.
Oh, go ahead.
No, I just wanted to know, like, are women missing a red flag somewhere? Like, when we are thinking, not me specifically, but in general, when women are thinking, oh, this guy loves me, he cares about me, I'm gonna let him hit raw. Are we missing anything, or are we just being naive to think that it's gonna be something long term?
Missing a ring.
We're like, oh my God, we're planning weddings, we're doing this in our head, and y'all are like, oh, I need to get a Plan B pill and crush it up and throw in her orange juice for the morning.
I didn't say that part. I was going to try and do it the righteous way and just tell you to take it. But.
Not that part.
So let us know, like, where we're messing up, because we don't see through a man's lenses. And a lot of times we just don't know. And, you know, if you can help us get some insight, I'm just curious. What are we missing?
That's why understanding, like, everybody is, we're individually unique. So understanding what character traits can kind of lead to some of these things, or just what good character in a man looks like. Because, a lot of times, I wasn't lying when I said a lot of us will, do this just so that we can and get the Plan B pill next. But some of us also do it so that we can trap you. I mean, if a guy meets a girl and he is like all about her and he's not sure how she's feeling about him, an easy way to take care of that is to trap her.
So it's safe to say that men trap too?
Oh yeah, sure.
Absolutely. My husband trapped me. It worked.
Well, at least he made you his wife, and it wasn't a baby mama like Future. He's out here creating baby mamas left and right.
But at some
but a
point,
man will
those
trap.
women have to understand that it's more to it than that. That they have to understand that he didn't wipe the other 4 or however many he has. What makes you think you're?
Women always think they're an exception. They always like, oh, it's gonna be me. I got that nah. I throw my pussy in the air.
It would be interesting to see like the type of game he talks to get these women to believe. Like, he needs to do a class. Like, this is what you say.
Okay, is Future a narcissist?
I don't know. To be honest, I don't know anything about Future.
He got like how many kids, y'all?
He can't diagnose that man on here.
No more than Nick Cannon. But I do want to say, because somebody said something in the chat that is interesting that I also very much so agree with. We don't really tend to listen as women. We like to hear what we want. Mm-hmm. We like to put our own interpretations on things instead of asking for clarification. I think the idea of love is so oversold to women that we'll fill in the blanks with what we want instead of what that man actually intends. And I think the moment that as women we start to not only listen to what that man is actually saying, like if he's saying I don't want children and is still shooting up the club, like that's a disconnect we should be paying attention to. If his actions and his words are not aligning, that's a disconnection we should absolutely be paying attention to. I think women are taught that to give too much grace, to give too much understanding, and to give excuses before explanations are offered. And that becomes like that demise that allows these men to run that game, that allows these men to trap women, that allows these girls to fall victim to, low self-esteem. I think that's really the biggest part of women valuing their bodies the way they are currently versus the way they should be, is that ability to really listen, right? Don't fill in the blanks. Don't add your own context to it. Don't spin it in a way that makes you feel good. Like if it feels terrible, that's okay. It's okay for something to not feel good, but to still acknowledge that it's true, I think would be really important.
I like that. You know what? I also think, do you think that women are having sex I mean, maybe they do understand, like they put those things together, but maybe because they're competing for the same men, they feel like that's the way to get into that guy. Like maybe I'm having sex with this guy because it's competition out there. I know he has.
Yeah.
We're competing, and if I don't give it to him, she'll give it to him.
Let me tell you, I actually have an example for that. So when I was in high school and I dated my high school sweetheart, we were both virgins. And we were both like, yeah, we're going to get married and lose it together and everything. And you know what? I'm going to keep it cute. Some girl, fast girl. Yeah, had experience. So she got in his ear telling him what she was going to offer him. And that's who he gave his virginity to. And I was like, no, we were supposed to do it together. Like, and, this whore, I'm going to say it, it stings a little bit when I talk about it from high school. I'm just saying that's supposed to, we were supposed to be like
it's so crazy. I see what she's saying, because it does seem when you're in a high school setting that the whores are winning.
Yeah, it does seem
like they get the guy, because the women, they don't understand that your virginity is so precious that you are actually the one who's winning. You give up your power when you have sex with a guy.
So
all they see is the girl who has sex gets the guy.
Yeah, so I felt like at that moment that she won. She won the guy. It was like once she put that thing on him, he ain't turned back. Brittany, who? Like what? Like what? He didn't look my way. Not ever again.
And during those years, they are winning. Like they get the men, like, because they put it out. So it's in the long run where they end up losing.
They lose, absolutely.
Well,
at that age, you don't have that foresight to think ahead. You don't. At that age, it's the here and now. You don't have that foresight to think ahead, to know what the consequences of that is going to look like.
But I think a lot of mistakes is, I think a lot of people take high school mentality and apply it to the real world.
Yeah.
Do you how do you feel about that, Nelson? That a lot of men and women take high school mentality and bring it to the real world. Like we're all just big grown adults, but we have childlike minds. Mm-hmm. Even when you're driving, people are like, "Don't skip me." Like it's like what? Like like people in the real world still. You ever be driving and somebody don't want to let you over, and there's just enough room for you, but they're
just being petty for no reason.
It's high school mentality, like somebody skip you in the lunch line type of thing. So I'm like, honestly, all adults, we're still just like in this high school mentality.
That's true. I mean, even look at in politics, like we're subgrouping in politics to where only certain legislators hang with these ones. Like everything that we learned in high school about how to interact with each other, about what it means to be popular, about what it means to be successful. We carry those things into our adulthood, and that's
and our work, our job. Like everybody clicks up at the job, everybody gossiping. You still got the girls that gossiping, being messy, and I don't like so and so. It's still the same thing.
The only mindset
don't practice is like emotional maturity. And like everybody wants to mature on all these different levels except for like emotional. So like you could literally you could be 30 years old but still operate like a 17-year-old because your emotions are not there. You're still responding as you were when you were in high school. So if you don't take the time to mature on that level, then you will forever. I've seen 60 people in their damn 60s still act like children. It's like, why are you acting like that? And you expect them to be wiser because they're older, but they still act like a damn child. So I think it's emotional maturity.
Well, where are they gonna learn that? Because even if they're in high school and they're now 60 years old and doing the same things, if they were never taught at any point in time, then you can't really expect them to know anything different.
You have to read books. I mean, if you're not taught, then you have to do the learning yourself. I mean, you could let me know.
But not if you don't know it's something that you need to change. Typically, when change occurs is because it's something that happens that interrupts like a certain pattern of behavior that make you reflect and say, okay, I need to know more about this. A lot of times, if you're moving through life without anybody confronting you or a situation that occurs that forces you to learn, it's easy to move through life without correcting any of your own behavior. And not just that, pointing to other people saying that they need to correct theirs without seeing the flaws that you need to correct.
But
And
So
on the only
That-
thing Miss Taken I'll say is that people feel like they're qualified to hold you accountable or shame you. Like sometimes it's like, who the fuck are you? And I'm sorry for my language, but it's like a lot of these men on these channels and pages be trying to hold you accountable and don't know not a damn thing about your life. They don't
Talk
know
about
what's
it.
going on. They want to come and shame you. I'm holding you accountable for blah, 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 blah. I'm shaming you because you need to be shamed. It's like you don't know that person. So I do agree that if you are going to hold somebody accountable, if you are going to bring some sense of shame, at least be somebody who actually care about that person, where you're doing it out of love and not trying to down that person and make them feel bad and shame them to the point where they're just a bad person. You have ill intentions on why you're saying this to this person. Maybe you're projecting something, you know, from your childhood. Maybe you're mad at your mom for being a single mom. So now you're taking that anger on another woman you don't know, and you're telling her all these things you wish you told your mom.
Well, I don't like this idea of holding people accountable, especially the way that I see it being used around it. Why do I keep blurring out? Especially the way that that we use it around the internet, because one, you should not be trying to hold somebody accountable if you can't actually give an account of them. You like, in order to hold somebody accountable, you should know who they are, what they're like, what their personalities like, have insight into patterns that have happened, that have happened in their life. Then you can go to them and say, I've noticed this about you, and it doesn't seem to be working for you. With these internet people that just come in and make these blind judgments, or you're a single mother, so you did something wrong. Like, to me, it doesn't hold any weight, because one, they don't know what they're talking about. Two, they don't know your history, and they may be well intentioned in principle to say, like, maybe it's not good to be a single mother. Yeah, the intention is good in that, but until you know somebody's individual story and all the variables that come into play, and we are notorious for doing this. We always take context and mistaken that with justification. So whenever we try and tell somebody all the factors that led to where we are in life, we always get the same thing. Well, that's not an excuse. You should have done this. You should have done that. Mm-hmm. When a lot of times we're not looking for an excuse. We're trying to say, these are the aspects of my life. This is why this is why I'm in the spot that I'm in now. And then you're in a place where you can actually start doing things differently when people understand that, instead of making judgments of you based on that. But these internet people, it's just they take talking points and they run with it, when their lives clearly don't match. I watch a lot of these relationship gurus. Most of them are not married. I don't see any kind of ring on their finger. They're telling guys what to do and what not to do, and that's a clear sign that somebody is a fraud, because you cannot tell a man to move this way, to behave this way, without knowing their individual story. We are all unique. We all think differently, process things differently. We need to understand how we do that on a fundamental level first, before we decide to start giving advice. Even therapists, I don't typically give advice. I walk alongside somebody where they're at. I'm sharing their pain with them and giving them an outside view of what's going on. Those are the things that help people change. If I just come in and say, do this, don't do this, you're not going to really learn anything other than to stop a single behavior. But walking alongside someone and knowing their story makes all the difference in people turning around, and kids growing up with maturity and have good heads on their shoulders. Like, it's a lot of stuff that we're just inherently missing in our community.
Wow.
I agree.
I agree. It's a lot of relationship gurus out there. What about the married ones? That's giving
There's married
women
ones?
There's some married ones that
Ooh.
they still I don't know.
Well, that's also the problem with these gurus, is because if you are going to be on a platform and you're giving advice and you're married and you're telling people what to do and what not to do, your life better be a perfect reflection of success.
Yeah.
And if you're not willing to share your life and share where you are in life and the problems that you have and the good things that you have, then you have nothing to stand on in terms of telling somebody else how they should move. Because I can look at your marriage and say your marriage sucks, and and I don't want anything to do with that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, you know what I mean?
They just feel like because they're married, they're qualified to tell people what to do. And it's like, we don't know what the dynamics of your marriage even looks like.
Yeah, being married is not a qualification.
I'm telling you.
I don't think, I just don't, in general, I just don't like the idea of people giving direct marriage advice. If you are going to walk alongside them and let them know what you're seeing, because the biggest change happens when you have an awareness of something that's not working for you. Because that's when you start working to change things in your life, when you realize for yourself this is a problem. So for somebody to just come in and arbitrarily tell you, no, this is what a real marriage looks like, this is how men are supposed to move, they're usually
I
insecure.
definitely experienced that. Like I am married. I will give advice, but not advice like you need to do this. I preface it with this is what works in my marriage, because I realize that how I move, the things that I bring into my marriage as my individual personality, my upbringing, the experiences that I have, all of those things are going to have shaped me into who I am. My husband, his experience, all of those things, and we're kind of commingling those things to make our marriage work. So in giving advice, you may not have had those same experiences, the same upbringing, all of the same things that make our marriage the way that it is. So what I do in mine may not necessarily work for yours. So if I say something, it's, well, in my marriage, we do blah, 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 or these are the things that we did and we had to work on. A lot of times I think when people are giving advice, it's a general statement that should apply to everybody. And it doesn't all the time. Now, of course, there's some key factors that are baseline that I would say, but just in general, like when we're having these conversations and you have a lot of, and I know people get mad, but right now as women, we're talking to you to get advice in terms of from a man's perspective, as well, is that is this thing about the idea of the men in these spaces. And I'm not going to say all men, because the men that I'm around don't behave the same way that I see in these spaces. This attitude of feeling like they can't coexist or cooperate with a woman. It has to be, I'm the lead and what I say goes. Or this idea of I have to be the one to break these women down because they think too highly of themselves. It's just this mindset. And so I guess I would like to know, where does that come from? Where is this idea? And I'm gonna say in a Black community, Black men, because I'm gonna be honest, men outside of my outside of the Black race that I've interacted with don't necessarily have that same mindset. I mostly hear it from Black men.
Yeah.
So where do you think that idea of the dominance, and I have to control, I need you to submit, we can't be cooperative, we can't be a partnership, like where do you think that comes from?
I think a lot of that came from the media and how it portrayed what it means to be a man and what protection and provision look like in our communities. And a lot of it came out in a very toxic way, like going back to that money, power, and respect type of thing. So now we have ideas of respect that look different than maybe the outside world. To us, respect looks like, you better not come on my block, you better not talk out of turn to me, you better not raise your voice at me, I'm always, I'm the man, I like what I say goes. A lot of those kind of toxic ways of looking at things come into play. But also we have to also realize that there is a place for some of that. It's based on the makeup of your marriage. If you are inside of a marriage where you are the primary breadwinner and you believe that you are the head of your household and that you are accountable to God for the functioning of your family, for your wife doing well, for your kids doing well, then that type of person may have a higher sense, may have more of a commanding presence, may be a little bit more no nonsense because they have that strong conviction to where it's like, I'm accountable to God for what I do with my family. So I'm going to make sure we're moving in the way that I believe is best. You have the other ones, some of the other guys that believe that, okay, well, I'm going to work. My wife's going to work. We're going to be equal partners inside of this. Is, wife rules the house. Whatever she says goes. I just make sure I bring the money home and let her do whatever she has to do. But there are marriages that are made up that way. I don't necessarily think that there's anything wrong with either side, just because the way our society is now and the way our communities are now, you have to have two people, making, two breadwinners inside of the house. So there's going to be certain sacrifices in terms of, power and respect that you're going to have. But if you are blessed that you can be and that's what a lot of men actually miss out on, is a lot in the red pill spaces. They don't understand all the responsibility that comes with the power. That is not solely just the finances. You literally are taking care of the lives of your family. That's so much more than just having the power to say, do this, not that. I think we really don't have an understanding of just what the weight of that actually is.
And it's so crazy that you said, because in the mid, when you were talking, I was thinking that too. I think a lot of times what ends up happening is, I do think that these people exist. I think that in the men in some cultures, they are the man and these women are under them, and that works for them. And they're seeing these things. But the problem is they're not seeing what these men are bringing. Like, these men are not going in half with their women. They're
Exactly.
not, you can't be the boss and not be the boss, so
Right.
And so women are now, so what happens is you try to take this 50-50 thing where you're not the full provider, and then she feels like, well, I'm helping you be the boss, so I should have the say. So what they're getting wrong is you got to do all of it to get all of it.
Right.
But have that understanding in the beginning, because it's perfectly fine for you to say, we're going to go 50-50 on the bills, but as the wife, I'm going to give my check to my husband and he's going to take care of the family. That's fine if that is what your core values are. But
It ain't
to say that this is inherently what it has to be, there's a lot of women that are like that. And
My aunts were like that. Well, different generation, but they were the breadwinners in their homes. But my uncles were the head, and they made money, and they just, he decided, like, what
because
was
a lot of good comes with that too. Because you also have to think that your husband is still going to be the person that makes sure that he maintains the house, that if somebody ever breaks into the house, he's the one that's going to jump in front and take that bullet. There's a certain level of security that comes with knowing that even if I lose my job, my husband is going to fill in the gaps. He'll do whatever it is that he needs to do to keep the family afloat. And when you have somebody that's like that, it makes it so much easier for him to function when he has a submissive wife that doesn't believe that washing dishes and doing laundry and playing supportive type roles, feeling like that's anything less than.
I agree. Go ahead.
I think we talked about it a little bit last week, right? And Nelson, I'm curious to hear your thoughts about this. I think the word submission gets to be a really interesting conversation, because oftentimes when people are talking about submission, they conflate it with obedience. And I think that dynamic, when we start to talk about how it functions in a marriage and people's misunderstanding of what submission actually looks like, can alter the dynamic of not just a relationship, but especially a marriage. So I'm curious to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, submission, for some reason, it means different things to different people. There's not one consensus on what submission is going to look like inside of anybody's relationship. But part of the problem is that we keep trying to make one cookie cutter definition for every family. So in my case, submission for me might mean I make the important financial decisions. If I make the judgment calls on what we're going to do, how we're going to do it, and my wife has other types of roles. That and submission also carries respect with it too. So, don't challenge me in public, things like that. To other people, there's men that have been raised by single mothers, so their definition of submission, it might be that. Well, it's actually, for them, it's a little bit harder. I need to think that one through, because submission for men that come from a lot of single mothers, actually, I've been seeing a lot of problems with that, is that they a lot of times have been wanting their wives or their partners to come in and actually function as the head of the house while allowing him to be the head of the house. Yep. That one's a little bit more funny. But overall, I think in terms of submission, I don't think that we should. Again, it's an individual thing. That's what everybody should learn during counseling. What does it mean for you to respect your man? What does it mean for you to love and honor your wife? So, and hear it directly from each other's mouth, because we get that confused so much, where you think you're doing something to please the person that you're with, and you're like, I've respected you this much that I did this, this, and that. And when he could come back and say, well, I don't even care about any of that type of stuff. So are you doing the things that matter to him, that shows him that you respect him, and vice versa? Or as a man, are you doing the things to show your wife that you love your wife?
Nelson, I know this is may deter a little bit, but this comment is so triggering. It's single mothers ruin most everybody, and I know it's a Black man that said it. What's up with these Black men? What did their mothers do to them? What kind of Black men were created to hate Black women so much? Like, it's every little mistake we make, they're like so angry. Why are Black men so angry at Black women? Like, what kind of mothers were they raised by?
I have a second part to that question. When did the switch happen of calling them fatherless homes to single mother homes? Like, when did that happen? Because there was a switch.
Wow,
that's actually that's a really great question. I actually don't know when that was that switch happened, but in terms of the anger towards single mothers, I don't think that there's I think there's an anger towards a perception of a specific type of single mother.
Okay,
so I think it has a lot to do with the way that they raise their kids, that the victim mentality of trying to milk every dollar out of the father, and downplaying him to the kids, talking bad about him, the sense of entitlement that comes with a lot of it, and a lot of it is sensationalized. We see a lot of it on TV and things like that. I don't think there are so many single parents out there that, like, I think most of us are just normal people. Like single mothers, they do the best that they can with what they got. There's some flaws inside some of the way that some of them think, in terms of how they accept men coming into their lives after they've already had a child. I think some of that is fundamentally flawed, because there's a lot of times when any man that's coming into the situation, a woman automatically, a single mother, a lot of times will be like, well, my kids come first. You got to come in second place, things like that. And not understanding that a man coming into your life, a husband coming into your life, that takes first place. both of you together, nurture and bring up the kids. But I think towards the single mother part, I don't think there's a real anger. I think there's a certain type of single mother that we all hate.
You
We all
don't
hate the
think
ghetto
that's not,
ratchetness.
no, it's a certain type of anger, and they box all single mothers alike. They box them and think they apply one
We're all
situation.
government assistants,
We're
even though
all
I've
on
never even
government
seen government
assistance.
Right.
assistance.
We can't find the dad. We didn't met him on a one night stand and
We a
decided to keep the
pookie.
kid.
Are you
That's
talking about
level of
specifically in the
ignorance.
in the red pill space?
Well, we're just talking
The
about
manosphere.
YouTube space, but
Manosphere.
Nas, that question, oh my God, I love it.
Yep.
because we're a matriarch. There it is. You play
And
when you're
that's
in
what I
a
was going
matrix.
to say. I
When
think
you're in a
the same
matriarchy
thing.
situation, you blame the person who's in charge, which is the woman. When you
No.
are dealing from a patriarchy, you blame men.
I
Black people blame
think the
women.
change
Other people
occurred.
blame men.
And
You
that's
know,
why
this is
our
just a
community
guess,
probably
but
was.
I'm thinking that the change probably occurred when the position or role of the man changed. So when you had more women that were going into the workforce and probably earning, about the same as men or more than men, and the idea of having children out of wedlock became increased, that maybe that's when that shift began to change.
So
I don't know. I'm just guessing, but that is such a great question.
because here's the thing, right? Is like whenever that shift happened of switching from calling it fatherless homes to single mother homes, the blame game shifted from men to women, right? And like I hear you mistaken about women joining the workforce, but if we're truly transparent in this conversation, when was there a time that black women did not work in the US?
No,
Right.
I said out earning.
Yeah, so out earning is a little bit different, but
Mhm.
then we also can factor in, a lot of the societal factors, right? With mass incarceration, with, the drug epidemic, the school to prison pipeline system affects boys more often than it does girls, right? So there are all of these factors that kind of add to it. But at some point there was a shift from fatherless homes, because I remember growing up that was what they were referred to as, right? And the blame was put on men, to now we are targeting the women and blaming women and saying that single motherhood is the problem. And so let me be clear, I don't think one party is more responsible than the other. It takes two people to make a child. It takes two people to make a family. There needs to be equal accountability as well as responsibility, right? But when we're talking about these single parent homes, the point of conversation shifted at some point. I can't remember when it was that it shifted, and now we've put complete responsibility on women, and almost as if, and I understand the legal part and child support and all of that stuff, but when we have this conversation, we move away from the responsibility of men and tell women, because you didn't keep your knees together, then this is entirely your fault.
I like that comment when whoever made the mention of like you blame whoever is in charge, and unfortunately we are in a matriarchy. Like when you look at the way that look at voting, more women, more black women are voting than men. When you look at the earning, now the earning, I'm not sure who's, all the way on top, but women are earning a whole lot more. They're making a lot more decisions. Look at it in Hollywood. I just saw Wakanda Forever, and I'm going off in there looking like, how is there no black men inside this movie? And why are the ones that are in it weak? The women are cheering and loving it and throwing up the Wakanda side, and I'm like, nobody sees an issue with any
But
of
who's
this.
the writers of these? I wanted to add to Anaz, and this may be controversial, but these are not my
Go
words.
for it.
These are not my words. Black men want to hold Black women accountable for the community as leaders, right? But when you think about the single motherhood rate, white men blame Black men for the single motherhood rate in the fatherless homes. You know why? Because you go on TikTok, You see a white woman with a black man, you're going to go through them comments and they're going to say, oh, she's going to become a single mom. Then you don't find those type of comments when there's the other way around, with a black woman with another race of men. But when there's a black man with another race of women, other races of men say she better be prepared to become a single mother. So other races of men look at black men like they are the problems because they are not being the leaders in our community and stepping up. They have excuses of why they leave the home. Your mama was nagging me. That's why I ain't shit. I couldn't get a job. If your mama just let me not pay, not be financially responsible and protect me, I would have been there for you, little Billy. And so now little Billy mad at his mama for, pushing his daddy away. That's what it seems like a lot of these men are mad about. I saw a video the other day, a man shouting at a black woman saying, my daddy wanted to be there, but my mama kept him away. And I'm like, there's two sides to the story. No, hold women accountable. And it's like, we're the only community
I
that
think
want to
B.
hold
Taylor-
women as like.
But B. Taylor, I think it's really important to really talk about the dynamic, right? Because the dynamic between black men and women is significantly different than it is between white men and white women.
Mm-hmm.
Black women have always been leaders alongside their men. When we look at a lot of the political movements, a lot of the social movements, there have been women there that have been at the forefront of it. They were not always the ones leading it or campaigning it or strategizing it, but they were definitely at the forefront, supporting and enforcing the policies that were put behind leaders, right? That doesn't happen with a lot of other cultures. So this idea of holding women accountable to some degree for community, I think makes sense in the Black community because women are leaders or have always been leaders alongside their men. The dynamics have changed depending on the time period, right? Depending on what society looks like, what community looks like, what family looks like, that's shifted a little bit when you look at that over time. It makes sense to also hold women accountable.
Well,
that doesn't happen in a lot of other societies.
yeah,
right? When
but
you look at a lot of other races and cultures, their women don't show up like that typically.
But that's what Black men are saying they want, that these passport bros are running overseas, taking the women of other men products. Like, these women are the way they are because the men in their culture are not y'all. And y'all are running over there trying to go get these women because the men in that society is not like y'all.
Well, so I think we do. So in regards to other races of men having these opinions of Black men, they're idiots. They don't know what they're talking about. They don't know anything. They don't know anything about our community other than what they see on TV. So I don't hold any kind of weight to anything.
Are they looking at that or the statistics though? Because when they see a single Black mom, they look at the dad. They don't look. They don't look at the.
They
women.
do. The men, the white men that I know, they do point fingers at the men. They hold men accountable. They are really big on, look, the man is the lead. He is the responsible party. They do.
Yeah, they do.
They don't know anything about Black. They don't know anything about Black men. I will never.
But they know that our community is wrecked, and they're looking at it like it's y'all. What are y'all doing? The women are working their asses off. I remember I heard an older white man say, "You know who worked the hardest out of all women are Black women. Black women. That's why they love hiring Black women in corporate America, because they know that they work very hard. They're committed to their jobs. They provide for their kids. They make a way out of no way, and they respect that." Like, you can sit down and have a very intelligent conversation with a lot of. I've heard so many older Black women say it's older white men love having conversations with Black women because of their intelligence and because of how hardworking they are. So when these are things that I've been told by older Black women in corporate America. I'm not trying to knock anybody. I'm, like I said, maybe controversial, but they look at the men. They look at the men and they respect the women.
There's a completely different way that Black men and white men look at power dynamics inside of relationships. Some of those men, you can get with them all you want, and you're going to find out that they enjoy certain things that Black men typically don't. I'm not going to say it online, but it's very different. That's all I can really say about it. Is it's different. A lot of women are looking at them as the gold standard, thinking that they do what they do what they're supposed to do, and it's the grass
Are
is
you saying
greener
we're
over
more
there.
fetishized?
Black women are fetishized with white
Like
men,
I'm saying-
absolutely.
No, I don't. I don't. Black men are
Depends.
fetishized as well.
Yeah, I think it's just
that they
yeah.
He said
their
it was
beauty.
different, so I was just trying to figure
No,
out.
the thing that I'm saying that's different, I can't say online.
I think
Okay,
that they.
okay.
Why is
I
it?
think
But they
that I don't.
appreciate their natural beauty. They don't tell them to straighten their hair. They're like, oh wow, kinky curly hair. That's so different. What is wrong with that? I don't see nothing wrong with that. Because Black women are not fetishized enough, but the mixed race and Hispanic or foreign, what is it called? Foreign women are fetishized by Black men.
Well, so going back to the passport bros thing, I think that is its own thing, because you have to look at, for a certain demographic of men, of Black men inside the Black community, they operate completely different. You don't hear about them. Like they're not posted in the news or on the media, anything like that, because those men are at home with their families. They work every day. They're not into all that type of stuff. So those men, I believe the passport bros are a collection of the men that are a little bit more modest, that have a traditional view of marriage, and they go overseas to get women that are more submissive. Not saying that all Black women are not submissive, but it's more difficult to find that certain type of woman. And when you are in a stage in your life when you want to just get married and be with somebody, I understand the desire to go to the place where you have the best chance.
Well, I think that has a lot to do, though, with whether or not because outside of the U.S., people look at us as Americans, so or Westerners, and so I think a lot of times the idea of the passport bro mentality, or even for women who are going overseas, that they come with a certain set of cultural values that support the way that they are in relation to marriage. When you're coming from a westernized society that think the way that we do, that doesn't necessarily translate over into a good marriage, because you have somebody that is submissive when you don't have the cultural backing that goes along with that. That's all.
That's true.
With that.
Do you think some of these guys are just lame and they can't pull women out here, and they know that if they go out there with their money, they look like they're more of something, and they could capture maybe a beautiful woman who is living in the slums of something, and she'll accept whatever he has? I think some of these guys are just lames.
I think
That's just my opinion.
part of it. I think that's one dynamic of it. I think the other dynamic is that there's a lot of misconceptions about what submission looks like in some of these other cultures. That this outward appearance of softness and this outward appearance of femininity, that those women don't have sharp tongues, or don't have an attitude, or don't have the same expectations when it comes to money or provision or protection. I think that there's a limited understanding of how those cultures work, and I can talk about that. Like,
do you think they're looking for a woman that's going to shut up and listen and do exactly what they say?
Yeah,
because they can't gain control here, so they want to go on other territory and see if they can get another type of woman that they can gain control over. I feel like
100%. I'm East African, and I've heard so many of these passport bros talk about East African women in a way that, like, being a part of the community, that I'm like, that doesn't really make sense. Like they talk about how soft they are and how submissive they are. They also say some of the meanest things I've ever heard people say before, right? And they say those things to their husbands. Some of those societies, even though they allow the men to lead, are actually matriarchal behind closed doors, right? And so I think that there's a lot of propaganda about what those cultures look like, and I think that's enticing to people who are buying that particular dream, that they're willing to spend the money to kind of go figure it out over there.
Can and I wanted to go back because I was trying to get in there when we were still talking about when B. Taylor brought up how other races and white men look at things. I mean, think about it this way. Even if you didn't hear the conversation that B. Taylor had with white men or the conversation I've had with white men, look who makes the laws. Those laws are meant to make men be accountable for their actions. And those are white men who've made those laws. So even if you've never been around this conversation before, just look at what's been implemented around us, which has been put in place to make the man responsible for through child support or all these other, policies that have been put in place to make him accountable. That's one thing. And then the second thing was, it doesn't matter if you're a man of success, if you're going to reach your purpose. I've never seen a man, I've seen it, it's just not a lot, who get there with somebody other than a Black woman beside them. It's something about the black dynamic with the Black woman and a Black man that the success will go a little bit further. I see men dating women of other races once they're already there, but I rarely see that he's been with this white woman. This white woman helped him get to the place he wanted to be. That's just me from what I've researched, when it comes to. Go ahead.
I'm sorry to jump in. I hear like some background noise.
That's my daughter in her.
Okay, I was just making sure it wasn't music or anything. Okay.
Go ahead.
I was like, whose TV is playing? Okay, I'm sorry. Okay.
Sorry,
go ahead.
So
okay, that's all I had to say.
I think part of that is also how we adapt inside of our relationships too, though, because I think younger Black men are more willing to have that type of dynamic with Black women, even at the cost of there being like contentious moments or getting a lot of attitude. Once they get into like the middle ages, when Black men hit their like 30s, the things that we value a lot of times completely change. You'll hear a lot of Black men, if you ask them what they really care about at that point, is peace. And we always talk about being a man's peace, and that nobody ever really gets a good hold on what that looks like and why it matters so much to men.
It matters to women too. I want peace.
That's what I'm going to say too. But I think also I'll hold women accountable and say that women weren't taught to know how to give a man peace. We just nag. And because we're not at peace. So you're not going to be at peace.
It goes back to the dynamic. She's not at peace because she's not allowed to be a woman. She's trying to do women thing with male roles, and she's a woman, so she's not at peace. But if we do it the right way, she's able to align her feminine. She will give you peace.
Exactly. And a lot of times women are supposed to be their peace, but y'all are making their lives hell. They're carrying on a certain level of burden that you couldn't even fathom. They do things behind the scenes that you would never even have to do. And you want us to be your peace. And not to say that women are like, and I can't speak for everybody, but I don't think most women try to purposely be like unpeaceful or try to create chaos, but it just happens when you're overwhelmed with a bunch of other things.
Some of them.
So I said I can't speak for everybody.
I agree. But here's the thing. I'm gonna say the controversial thing. I disagree, Curves, only on the basis that if women were really intentional about their peace, if their peace really mattered the way that they say it does, they would not continue to stay with a man that brings them chaos. So how much does it matter if your boundaries aren't enforced, right? If you're continuing to not only stay in a relationship, but get married to a man who brings you chaos. Because here's the thing is, like, we talk about it all the time, right? Like the game. Men will not marry a woman that brings her chaos. They might be in a relationship for 10, 12, 15, 20 years. But that's not going to be his wife, because his boundary around peace is still there, right? And I think it's important that if women are going to say that peace is just as important to them as it is to men, that we also reinforce our boundaries around peace and not continue to stay in places that aren't peaceful.
Agree.
I also
Make sure you
think
cite those super chats too, Taylor.
Yeah, I'm gonna read the super chats in a minute. I'll let you take a
I
moment.
also think it's about defining what peace looks like. I think a lot of times we I don't want to say these generic terms, but we say these terms that can have a generic meaning. And what I think peace may look like for me versus what my mate wants peace. If I'm giving him peace based on my thoughts, he could still feel like this is chaos or vice versa. So I think a lot of times everyone knows a definition of a word, but doesn't necessarily know how that word applies to each individual person. And so I think that's where the difference lies. So I agree. I think women want peace just as much as men, but our idea of what that peace may look like is different. So we have to get clarification from each other. And so then that way we can go ahead and move forward and do that thing that brings each other that peace.
Yeah, peace for a woman is definitely important. That's why the Tamara, which one got divorced? Which one getting a divorce? Tia is probably getting divorced because her peace of mind. You know, a lot of women are willing to walk away from their families, not families, but they'll separate, break up the family for peace.
She's completely delusional. When you listen to her account of how she looked at marriage, she lives on another planet. So that's one thing.
They usually do.
And there was a rumor that I don't know if this part was a rumor, but she met what's the guy's name? Corey. She met him when he was broke and not doing anything, not necessarily not doing anything with himself, but he was struggling. And part of the reason why the marriage failed was she got tired of him around things that had to do with finances. So, she should have understood that in the very beginning. If he was broke back then and he didn't seem to know how to deal with money, don't try to Build-A-Bear him and turn him into a man that is frugal and does all the right things. Like, you know what you got in the beginning. Don't think that a man is going to change.
Wow. Yeah.
Well, if that is the case.
Yeah, he was a struggling. He was an up and coming artist, and I think
wouldn't that be like building with him though?
Yeah. So I think at some point he should have realized it wasn't working, and okay, maybe I need to try a different path.
No, I like what you said.
They just hold on to that dream, baby. No, break one day.
Because my dad always taught me and my sisters, like, how you meet a man is typically how he's going to be. Like, don't think that you're going to go into any relationship or any situation where you're going to be able to change another human, because the majority of the time who you meet is what you're getting. And, like, people can change, but most of the time that has to be something that they want to do. So if you're going into a situation and you're like, oh, I see potential, he could be this, he could be that, and it's like you're being goofy, because if he doesn't see that in himself and he doesn't want to change, then what you're seeing is what you're going to get. So,
we do the same thing with women too, because we go after the women that barely wear any kind of clothes, and then we lock them up, and then we automatically think they're going to be wearing these full dresses and covering everything up for us.
I do have a question. This might be a little bit off topic, but I'm just curious to know, like, why do you think that maybe Black men aren't being more intentional in dating and like trying to marry? Like, why is it so smash and let's go to the next and let's play around? Like, Black men play for a very long time.
A long time.
As long as they look kind of decent, or their money might be a little right. That doesn't even have to be the case, and they still can play around. So why are they not taking marriage more seriously? Why are they so quick to shoot up the club? And I know you can't speak for everybody, but just curious as to.
I really think this is systemic. Like this, there are so many different factors. There are, like, one, we're taught at an early age that we need to be manipulative. We're taught that we need to have game. We're taught especially by our fathers and our uncles. We're taught the things we
By
need to
other
say
black
to a
men.
woman.
By other black men.
Well,
Be Taylor stuff.
but we're taught what to say, how to do it, and it's very much sensationalized, the idea of having as many women as you can. Like that's just kind of, that's kind of a known fact of kind of the way that our community runs. But to me, it's a 50-50 thing too, because the women that you have a lot of the young men in high school got a great head on their shoulders, but because they are not the star of the team, or because they're not going around playing all the girls and they're more quiet and they just want to get to know you, they get looked over. And then what ends up happening is the women realize later on, after they had a kid or two, that this was a good guy that I had back there and I felt safe with him. You try to go back to him and by that time, he's so beaten down by, never being able to really get anybody or feeling like he's, not worth anything, that now he's turned into a dog too. Like we both create each other. It's not one or the other.
So women create the F-boy.
Right. It's just like the girl in high school that was promiscuous that is still doing that in her adult life. And now she's trying to turn around 3 kids later. And she's like, I want a good guy who's going to, and I've even seen jokes where they're like, girls be hopping in the dude's inbox that they played like years ago. And they're like, hey, big head, after they had 3.
And let me just say this. Sometimes, and this is the thing what men need to understand. Sometimes the promiscuous woman does not have kids. Sometimes she can't have kids. Sometimes she has had so many abortions, you can't even count them. So you can't judge a book by, because she's had kids. Sometimes that's just the woman who just didn't want to have abortion. She doesn't believe in abortion, But so I hate when that whole thing, like we can tell because of the kids, because that gives people who aren't promiscuous, who just had a kid, a relationship of that name, when it's the hoe that don't have the kids who be declaring it, they know her name with them signs. They like, you back? Like,
I mean, that's true, but you gotta.
That's why they can judge, because you don't got the receipts to see like, she did that.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, because as clinicians, we need to look at the risk factors. So when you look at a risk factor for being with a woman that's promiscuous, having a lot of kids, that is a risk factor. That kind of it tells a little bit of a story, bits and pieces of their life, their attitude, the way they behave, where they live, all these different things.
Of course, yeah.
You get information from these things. So you're right. It does kind of let the ones that don't have any kids a little bit off the hook. But I think once you sit and talk with them for a little bit, you can kind of see why they're single and why they've been around.
I'll say this and then I'll go into the super chats. Because this comment kind of like sparked a question. Do you think the Ciara's prayer kind of sparked delusion with a lot of like it's women that's like 5 kids and they're like, Ciara's prayer. Like, I'm gonna get me my
one child, not 5. Russell didn't sign up for 5. He signed up for 1.
Nobody knows anything about Russell Wilson. If we need to really take a deep look into his character, because if you look around and you listen around the NFL, different men tell you about what he's actually like.
What? So, tell us.
Not that
listen, all I know is that man hold down his family. That's all that matter.
What he like? I want to know.
Yeah, like give us.
He's incredibly self-centered. He won't even talk to his own teammates, but through his agent. Like those are different factors that go into his own character, that he believes he's above everybody else. I'd be scared. I'd be terrified that man's a narcissist.
Really?
He's not diagnosing.
It's given.
That's not. Oh no. I'm saying a narcissist. If I was diagnosing, I'd say narcissistic personality disorder. I'll make that distinction. So I'm not diagnosing.
Okay, so, but women look at Ciara and say, wow, like that could be me. That gives me hope that I'm in this situation and I am going to get my Russell Wilson. Do you think that creates delusion or creates women to do better?
It creates delusion, and then when they do get in relationships that resemble that, they realize that those relationships are toxic, because the men that present themselves to be the amazing men that can do no wrong they tend to be narcissists. Derek Jackson.
She looks happy with that narcissist.
Can I also just say that I feel like not all single moms are the same. Like there's levels to the single mom thing. Like you got the ratchet ones who are living off the government doing XYZ, and then you have the other ones who are really killing it. And I just like there's a different caliber of single moms.
There
and I wish that was talked about more, because a lot of times you say single mom and you think from the trenches, she's ghetto, she's this, she's that, and it's like,
some amazing people, especially in our community, came from single moms.
Yeah, Obama came from a single mother.
Unfortunately, of course, that's not the ideal situation. Let's not
the ideal, but I think they need to stop trying to condemn the children, like, or say, oh, those children are gonna be messed up. No, you got messed up. Say you got messed up. Don't say anybody else's children are messed up.
And I think that too, it depends on your village. I mean, I kind of like what that girl was saying at the beginning. It depends on your village, because even though the father may not be there, maybe there was a grandfather who stepped in as the father, or there were other father figures, and those people make a difference, because those father figures, yes, the father wasn't there, but there were father figures in the,
Wait, I thought a single mother is a woman who just she's not married, because like there's women who will call themselves single mothers, but they have not only a village of support, but the fathers are like heavily involved, and everybody's a big family.
Can we all define what single moms mean?
Yeah,
I consider myself a single mom, and I got all that. I got involved fathers and involved family.
Maybe we need to
when they count in the census, they look at it unmarried. When they're counting that, because they don't count cohabitating, they don't count if the dad is involved. What they count when they're doing, like, the census is she married or not?
No, I'm not talking about the census. I'm talking about like men in particular. When they hear, first of all, it's such a negative stereotype, right? That they type all situations all in one. And they say, oh, you should never slept with that man if he wasn't going to take care of his kids. And it's like, he is taking care of his kids.
Do you think we would have if we would have known?
But then it's like, but some situations, like, he is taking care of his kids. He picks them up every day from school. Like, what are you talking about?
What is a single, and I know I'm not moderating, I'm just curious, like, when you hear single mom, what is your definition of that?
So when I hear that, I think of a woman who's never been married. That child was born and raised out of wedlock, right? Okay. I think a mother who is single is looked at socially and societally very different. That is a marriage that did not work out. However, that child was either conceived or raised inside of a marriage. I understand why some people, it's important to make that distinction, right? Like whether it feels good or it feels bad, I'm not shaming anybody. That's not my intention, right? The distinction is important because I think we've talked time and time again about the value of marriage. I will also say that there has not been enough research, right? And I'm not making any definitive claims, but I would love to see more research done of unhealthy marriages and the impacts that has on children. And then we can really have an authentic discussion about what it looks like to raise a child, for that child to be healthy, happy, productive, right? Because is it better for the quote unquote good single mother who's involved, who has a community, who has support, who has healthy male examples for those children,
or fathers in their life,
or fathers in their life, right? Yeah. That community raising a child, is that producing a child that's better ahead than a child that's growing up in a broken home, but still a home with both parents, right? But because that research isn't done, we're comparing the toxic single motherhood to healthy married dynamics, right? We're not able to have a real conversation about, what realistic outcomes are.
And I'll say this as a journalist, this week, well, just actually yesterday, we covered 2 murder suicides in just one day. Okay, married couples that had children one of the children witnessed the murder suicide. Okay. So it's like, we want to sit here and say marriage, marriage, marriage. Some people don't need to be married to the people that
That
they had
part.
kids with, because those kids will come out more messed up and messed up than her being better off. You'd rather be in a safe environment where the parents are actively involved. Everybody's there at the birthday party. They're there at the games. They're just not in the same household. Or you can be one whole blended family like the Brady Bunch. It works out. Why is it that everyone thinks it's one size fit all?
I
Like,
think both.
Yeah.
There's negatives to both though, because so being inside a household with two parents that should not be together, you really classify it as being in a dysfunctional household. That is one of the main risk factors for children develop growing up with personality disorders. Children, but then you also have to look at, you're still boiling down to the character of the parents, because you can have a single mother, and if the father is still a dysfunctional person, when that child goes to see the father, there's still going to be a lot of risk factors there for that child becoming a child with personality disorder or dysfunctional, as well as vice versa. If a father has custody of the child, this one I've seen a lot, where father has custody of the child, mother is clinically like has issues, like but it's like a lot of it's undiagnosed, and the child ends up behaving exactly like mom does, and there's nothing that father could have done. Like all of this really comes down to vetting the people that we are with, but vetting them in the right way, vetting them in terms of mental stability, in terms of character. Like we need to revamp the way we look at dating, because some of these people should have never gotten married in the first place.
Yeah.
And if we really understood what risk factors look like, what somebody that's unhealthy mentally look like, I think a lot of women would have avoided those men to begin with, as well as men avoiding those women.
Well, that's how I feel about some of these men in these spaces with this hate in their heart. I'm like, oh my God, are y'all stable?
No, they're not.
come
What's
back a little
going
bit.
on,
Like,
Nelson?
it's like, calm down.
What's going on? Why are these men so angry? Why do they hate women?
And it's women too. It's not just men.
Go ahead and read the super chat.
I'm gonna go ahead and read the super chats, and then
Super
then you can answer. I'll read the super chats. We have a $10 from Knock It Off Jack. Do you have an email so I can formally submit a request to do response to some of your videos? That's a Lapeef thing. You may want to hit him up on Instagram.
Yeah.
But thank you for the $10 super chat. We appreciate it. Sir Chai 87, Mistaken, hit the nail on the head. Black America, men don't trap women now. The brother is lying.
They don't do nothing wrong.
Right. They did in the early 2000s.
J. Marie with the $5 piece. No one's perfect or qualified. So who holds who accountable? Sounds like no one to me. I think we kind of established that who should hold people accountable. If they have, what was the word? Account. If they have an account on them or something like that.
If they can give account of you.
Yeah, account of you. Thank you. Black America, again, with the 2 piece. What women make more than men? Black women make
so basically what he's saying is, and mistaken, because I know she's the one who's the research person. What they're saying is, so when you put a woman, let's just say if you put a man and a woman and they do the exact same thing, they have the same degree field and they go for the same job, that man is going to out earn that woman. Okay. However, if a woman is highly skilled, she's going to out earn the guys who are not highly skilled. You understand what I'm saying? So when it comes to, we're like, for example, he's a therapist, I'm a therapist, us going back to back, he's going to make more money, you know? because we have the same
Statistically
skills. Men
speaking, right.
outdo women in the same skill. But what you're talking about, as far as when people say more Black women are becoming educated, more Black women are doing all these things they say Black women are doing, even though it's not most Black women, it's just more. That when you're looking at that, then that's where the income becomes more women out earning Black men. Does that make sense? Did I make sense there?
Yeah, that makes sense.
Okay.
Jason C with the 5Ps. At what point in history has Black women out earned Black men? Just curious for my research. Well,
you can actually look up a study that says gender pay gap narrows. I can't remember where it's from, but it talks about how especially younger women have closed the pay gap and outpacing their male counterparts, and depending on the city as well.
I didn't mean to do that. Put that back up.
Yeah.
That's a disgusting
Taylor.
comment. That is such a disgusting comment.
What do you say?
Immediately, only one party has 100% reproductive rights. What? Like,
well, no, he's right, but he can control where he puts that seed. Don't put your seed in a garden you don't want your tree to grow.
That's my point.
And then two, you have control over marriage. It's a check and balance.
Come on, thank you.
Well, you have all of the power before. She has the power after.
Single Black America again with another 2P. Single mothers have more than one kid's father. I thought a single mother was a mother who was unmarried, regardless of how many she got.
People won't say anything,
right?
Well, he's paid to say it, honey. Let him.
Okay, thank you. We appreciate it. Congo English with a 5Ps. What type of men are you dealing with?
We're just speaking in general.
Yeah, we're not making anything personal.
I actually have great,
except my high school boyfriend. Other than that, nothing's personal. All right, Mr. Ride. Okay, y'all.
If y'all ever call cussing, listen. You ain't gotta tell me they got an attitude. Try telling their kid is failing. And try to blame it on the kid. Oh, the attitude.
Oh wow, yeah. I can't.
I know they do.
And you don't stop, yo. With the 5Ps, a friend of mine always said, how are Black women supposed to act soft and pink when we are treated hard and Black? Ooh.
Talk about it.
Word.
Stop choosing those type of men that treat you hard and Black. It goes both ways.
You choose. It's the
society.
All right, that's what I was going to say. I think it's society, but I also think men, and when we're looking at a society, and this is, Black men get treated hard as well too.
They do.
So I think both of us, and I think that's the problem. We're coming into relationships where the outside world are treating us hard, but we don't know how to be soft with each other.
It's too much trauma. It's trauma on both sides, and we butt heads.
That's true. Yeah. JC with the 5Ps. Objection. Leading question.
It probably made sense when we were talking about it.
Right. Rebellious videos with a 5Ps. I'm thankful for having good examples of Black women in my life. If all I had was this panel, she's divest. If we're so bad.
Listen,
Black men.
We're just having a look, let me just say this. This is crazy. Can you help me with this, Nelson? Men, especially in this space, can say divest, but as soon as a Black woman mistaken just yesterday, all she said was, listen, if we know that women outnumber men, do you think it would be wise for women to think outside the box? Maybe date other races of men. Oh, they came for her head because you can't say it. They can say it all day long.
Oh, I just said
belong to them.
Nope, I just said it on my channel. I said, no, go where you are loved, Black women. Statistically, we were told that it's more Black women than Black men. Therefore, go where you are loved.
And one out of every 4 Black women are married. So, like, what are you supposed to do? And a good majority of our men are either incarcerated, they could be homosexual, or they could just be straight up men that are not dateable or married, like marriage material.
So I hear it, right? But I think to
What do
what
you
I
hear,
was saying,
Enon?
to what I was saying earlier, I don't know that women really hear men when they say things sometimes, because what I heard from that comment is like we're being, and again we're having a discussion, right? So like context is missing, but I think what he's trying to say is like, you know, maybe a little less criticism, a little more love. That's what I'm
Enos,
hearing,
what are we
right?
doing? What are we saying?
We're just
Because
having
you
a
have
No, I,
mixed
I
bag a
I
lot
get
of
it. I
times.
get it, right? So like we're here to have like a conversation, to dissect things, to get understanding. Nelson is here to give us a little bit of male perspective. I think this is a really great opportunity to ask some uncomfortable questions, right? But I think sometimes when we don't log off of social media often enough, that's all we hear. And so anytime we hear a discussion, we hear it as criticism, right? So I don't know that rebellious is necessarily coming from the point of view of like, you know, just stop dating black men, stop marrying black men. I think he's saying like this sounds really critical, and I'm gonna say, this is my personal opinion, that maybe it's time to log off and take a break from these kind of conversations. This conversation isn't to criticize black men, it's more to explore the conversation and reach some sort of understanding, because you know the show's called The Solution. We're trying to find a solution. I haven't heard any criticism. I think it's been a really interesting and transparent dialogue. But I think it's coming from the place of like, you know, men trying to ask for women for a little more love. That's the way I read it, at least.
Thank you for breaking that down. We don't listen because all I saw was
Thank you.
SYSTM, and I was like, get him.
You know, I'm one. Listen, I'm in these spaces, but I feel like you have to go where you are loved. If
Yeah.
you feel like there's not a black woman who is treating you fairly, or you can't get it, go. But my thing is this: if you go, leave us at your mouth. What are you talking about us for? Be happy in utopia. Talk about the utopian women. Like, this is what I experience. It's the ones that you're there, but you're still talking about us. So why are we still?
Come on. Talk
Exactly.
about
And
it,
then
man.
it comes to, I was just doing a live earlier and somebody came to my page and was like, save yourselves, get your passports. And I said, bye. Why are you over here? This is
I don't know
the
what they
whole black
want us
woman
to
panel.
say. It's
Where's
like
the
we
black
don't even
man?
know you personally, so you're not gonna care. The only time we're gonna care is if it's somebody we know personally, a person that we desire, and it's like, okay, yes, we would love for you guys to stay here and work it out. But if you feel that you are better somewhere else,
Look, this he's the basement with his little $2. But thank you. Shout out to the future golden girls on this panel. It's cool. We'll take that.
listen, thank you for being a friend. Look,
Okay.
let me tell you this. Look, check this out. People talk about this, but let's just be honest. I have a grandmother who has outlived my grandfather for 12 years. I have another grandmother who outlived for 20 years. At some point, somebody's going to outlive the other.
Yeah.
And there's going to be a spill. I mean, this thing about y'all dying together, it just doesn't happen. I mean, it does, but you know.
Right.
So at some point, you're going to be alone. You know, and if you've done your children right, your kids will be there for you.
Yeah.
You know,
and
people in your lives are going to be there for you. So to sit here and say go, like I think that the difference between men and women, men really think that women are just gonna fall over because they don't have a mate. The problem is women do want the mate, they do, but they don't want it with just anybody. Anybody won't do. That women don't work like that. Maybe men can do that. Women cannot. So when she says, "Oh my God, I hate being alone," what she means is, I haven't found the right guy for me. There's always a guy, just not
There's
the
always
right
a man.
And if she doesn't, some women feel that if I don't have the right guy for me, that it's better for me to be alone than be with a person I just know I don't even want to be with. Like, imagine waking up to a person and you don't even want to be waking up to this person for the rest of your life.
Okay, so we got Black Lexicon with the 5-piece. I've been paying attention to what the 10-year-olds have been up to in the news. Tragic and befuddling. I would blame TikTok. 10 years.
I would blame the games and all the tablets and people just they're right here with it.
Huh?
What's the question?
Congo
Not gonna
English.
always do that.
Congo
boy.
English with the 5-piece. I have a question for the single ladies.
What? Congo, stop doing that.
I was say you gonna
Congo
spend another
English with
$5
the
to ask the
10-piece.
question?
What is the bare minimum for you to operate in your healthy vulnerability for the most part? Anybody care to answer?
Can you read the question again?
Oh,
Yeah.
it got
Why do I
kicked.
keep doing that? Go back. Let's go back. What was the question? Okay.
What
Yeah.
is the bare minimum for you to operate in your healthy vulnerability for the most part? The bare
Enos,
minimum.
that sounds like a question for you.
Yes. Safety. Emotional, spiritual, financial safety. The
All of
moment
that.
a woman feels safe, feels like it is a healthy, productive environment where she is allowed to be herself without correction. Correction is important, right, in a dynamic because it fosters growth, but in a space where you are not criticized and reprimanded for being yourself will allow that woman to be
Shamed.
soft. Yep, to be soft, to be vulnerable, to be submissive, to be cooperative, to be understanding. If that safety does not exist, you're probably going to wind up with a few headaches. You can take that, you can leave that, you can fight that, but if you take a look at it, at some point, if you've had issues with a woman, there's been a safety issue somewhere along the way.
That part.
That part, I agree. We got Black Lexicon again with the 5-piece, 100, Shan. But I recommend trying all 52 states first before going overseas. I have only eliminated one state so far.
What state is it? What state is it?
What state? I just want to know. Okay. So look, y'all, I don't want to keep y'all too late. Oh, wait. Did I not have the okay. I don't want to keep y'all too late, but I do want us to react to this video of this lady because what is this? Okay. We're gonna react to this and then we are going to give our final thoughts and solutions. And then we're gonna head out. Okay. All right. Let's
Tina
play
Toner
this.
body shaper. Tina Toner body snatcher came today. I'm gonna show you guys how it looks on. Okay, this is what I'll be wearing today. I'll be putting my body shaper on. I know I got booty already, but I'm trying to give more hips, more butt, you know. Hey guys, so get into it. I'm in my Tina Turner body shaper, and as you can see, you could barely tell where it starts. Here it goes. It blends really well with my skin. It adds good definition to my hips and butt. And look how small it made my waist. It added way more hips. Look at it from the side. Looks good. Here's the back. It added a lot more butt. It's really comfortable. You can't even tell that I have it on. You can't tell how high it goes. It sucks all of this in. Okay, so overall, I'm in love with this shaper. It's added so much and it looks so good. It's so comfortable. It's not too hot. It's not too tight. As you can see, this is the body shaper without the clothes on. Still looks good. Blends really well with my skin complexion. As you can see, it does have a hole in between for the restroom when you need to use the restroom without taking it off. You just
That is so funny.
Reactions,
So funny.
ladies, please. The body dysmorphia
No, ma'am.
with Black women and these BBLs and
I hate to,
and not valuing their natural body. What is going on?
I hate to blame social media for it, but social media is the cause of so much insecurity and so much everything. Like everybody feels like they have to fit a certain type of look, and I mean, she about to put on a whole ass suit to feel cute. Like that's crazy. Why? Like I would rather, and I can't really speak because like I've been blessed top and bottom. I'm a curvier woman, whatever. But I don't know what it feels like to feel like that. But I promise you, I'm not putting no ass suit on. I would rather be out here with no cheeks than to put on an ass suit. That's just me personally. Like,
So it's definitely not just Black women. It's not. There are a whole lot of women, like Hispanic women are infamous for BBLs. I think that may have been where it started.
Oh.
You know, white women are doing it. Like it's not just Black women,
Why are
right?
we falling
And it's
victim
also
to it?
not just social media, because there was also the trend of like really petite women that came in the magazines, and I think it's just media in general. And I think women will go to great lengths under the knife or otherwise, depending on their finances, to appease the male gaze. And that's not a bad thing, right? I think there's nothing wrong with wanting to be attractive to the person you're attracted to.
it is if you're putting your life in danger.
Yeah, but I think there's like reasonable limitations, right? Like there's that self-worth and like real confidence in yourself that like being who you are and how you look is enough. Like men are not a monolith. Not all men enjoy the BBL body. Not all men enjoy the petite woman. Not all men enjoy like there are so many men that have different types that are attracted to different things, that there is going to be someone out there that is attracted to you as you are. But I think that women are gaslit into like this operating from a space of lack. Like how many times do you hear there are so many more women than men? Like you're either going to have to be a polygamist, or you're going to be okay with a cheater, or you got to be somebody you're not to wind up with somebody, right? I think there's so much propaganda that like we're taught that just being you isn't enough, right? And so women do things like this because they've internalized it.
And I hear what you're saying, but you said that social media doesn't have a lot to do with it. Even we can go back before social media was a big thing. Magazines, you know, there was always something that showed some photographic image of what beauty was, whether it's blonde hair, blue eyes. Back in the day when women were wearing corsets, squeezing their fucking organs together just to have this small waist and this illusion, like it's always going to be something, and people are going to follow what they see. So, and what do you see on social media, or even just Fashion Nova, whatever you're shopping? All these women have the same damn body type. They got the same duck lips. They got the same titties. They got the same butt. They're all getting.
These Kardashians done gave them a little, you know.
I was just thinking about that because before the BBL, before the public knew about BBLs and Brazilian butt lifts and stuff like that, it was the waist shapers. Everybody thought if I get a waist shaper, I'm gonna look like Kim. When really,
I'm a bag of rich guy. I'm gonna have a small waist, cute face.
Yeah, it was definitely social media that has pushed it. I know people personally who went and got a BBL, and I'm like, yo, you can't tell them nothing. And then they get addicted to it. They get addicted. This woman obviously had a nice butt, a big butt, but she didn't feel like it was enough because it didn't look like the women from Instagram. So she needed her hips to be wide along with her butt. And she felt like she needed to add on and create this illusion. And I'm pretty sure she's not going to go on no first date with it because she knows that a man's going to be like, what happened? You know, but she's going to take photos on Instagram and post them to the gram for validation.
So I have a question for Nelson. I heard something the other day, and I'm curious to get the male perspective on this. So I heard that with social media, that it's more so that these women are, the BBL women are typically showing more skin. And that's what's attracting men. And it's not necessarily the body type. And so it's giving women the wrong impression that men are all lusting after the same body type. So can you give us some insight on that?
That's actually an interesting question. I personally feel like the men are more interested in the BBL look. I mean, that you can, with a lot of women, you can tell when something is altered, and it looks, to be honest, it just, a lot of men look at those types of women and look at those unique shapes that come with a BBL as just fun. You don't take them seriously. You have fun with them. You don't. They're not. They would never get into a serious relationship with that person. So I think looking natural is, even if you get a BBL that is more natural, I think what's happening with a lot of women is they're going way overboard. Instead of wanting, being okay with a moderate level of attention that's given to them, they have a need for attention. And with that need for attention, they go a little bit overboard, and now they have trouble fitting through doors, and like it just gets, nothing ends up being good enough. But there's a lot of women that are flat chested, and they're not doing it to impress another man, but they like the way they look with a certain breast size, so they get implants, they get a BBL that's proportionate to their figure. Those types of things that have the things that are not related to doing it for the pleasure of another person, I think that is a little bit more on the healthy side. But in terms of what men tend to go for, I can't speak for all men, but I feel like a lot of men that go for the BBL look, it is because of that extreme look and the curiosity of what it would be like to have sex with that woman.
Exactly. Hey, and I've actually seen a woman, she was a hairstylist, and she was saying the majority of the women whose hair she does, the women with the BBLs are not getting married. Like, they're having issues. They're out here still dating. And the other women, you could be a plus size woman, you could be a petite woman, whatever it may be. These women are getting married, and more so the women who have BBLs are just kind of getting played with. They're not getting married. So, I mean, I would agree with him based off what she said, because it's like, is it just like a fun look? Like, dang, that looks like a lot of fun.
Think about it from a guy's standpoint too. Like, why would we want to go out somewhere with a woman knowing that her butt is going to get all this attention because it's so unnatural? Like that, it's an embarrassment.
I think too. What
walk
happens
around like it's a trophy.
Yeah, toxic men, baby.
Yeah, because let me just tell you this. I grew up in the 80s and 90s, and not one person outside of a black woman had a butt. And when I say the butt was not there, it was not even in.
It was inverted.
You couldn't tell the difference.
All of a sudden, I guess butt booties come in the jeans, like all of this popped out because of the time. Sorry. Okay, they don't have school tomorrow. But it was something else I was gonna say. I think we've had this discussion before. The problem is the men that women desire are the ones who have this thing going, you know. For example, it's not like her butt is super big or it's like a nice little cute, figure or whatever. But what happens is when women see the men they desire with a certain type of woman, they aspire to be like that woman. And fortunately, whether it be entertainment or anything of that nature, those guys who are higher up in the hierarchy as far as finances are concerned, they usually have a certain type of woman beside them who have these features.
Mm.
And I was also going to say too, like, kind of what you were saying, like, I know girls especially are more susceptible to body image issues, and that's because even in these spaces we hear it now as adults, the men just saying things,
what size are you?
Want fit, feminine and friendly. Like, it is so much emphasis that are placed on our body and our looks. And so we learned early on that we think that our value, especially a value to a man, is always going to be about how we look. And so then when we see all of these images of, like, you're trying to sell a car and there's a woman washing the car or selling a drink and she's half dressed, and you're seeing these things. And when you are seeing these pictures, a lot of these women don't look like you. You know what I'm saying? Like, I know for me, when I was younger, I was very shapely at an early age. I had the small waist and the hips, and I had grown men coming at me, and that made me very uncomfortable in my body. And so then I love, the era when the baggy clothes came out, because I was able to hide. And then as I got older and I saw that it was attractive, my shape was attractive, and I was getting attention from the men that I liked, then it was, let me wear these short shorts. You know what I'm saying? So I think since so much emphasis is placed on our bodies, that's why you have so many women that are willing to die to look a certain way, because it is the idea of me looking like what perfection is supposed to be, and then I'll be able to attract or have access to the type of man that I like. And I think we're responsible, but I also think society is responsible as well. And when on one end, when men are saying they want, oh, I love natural looking women. I want you. I don't like women that wear makeup. I don't like women, that have these weaves in their hair. I don't like, all of these things that they say that they like as natural. But then when you're seeing social media or you're seeing certain things, it doesn't match up with what they're saying. And so for women who are not, that are natural, but they're seeing in their minds the opposite, then it kind of puts them in a position to say, let me get this weave, let me get let me put some more makeup on, because they're trying to look more attractive to get more.
I think I agree with that. And I think if more men fall in line and suit and say that, stop giving attention to these Instagram girls and put like, first, I guess some reason Ice Spice, I think she's more popular amongst men than women, because she's the first natural hair rapper with her. She's literally wearing her natural kinky curly hair, and she doesn't have like loads of makeup on. She looks kind of like natural. She has a naturally voluptuous body. So men are like, I saw comments where women were like, I don't see what everybody is hyped about. And men were like, because you're not a man. So it's just like, if they did more of that and they stopped praising the women who got these BBLs and long weaves and stuff like that and heavy makeup on, then maybe the women will say, and they start praising the fitness models more and reposting them instead of women showing their ass online and twerking and dancing. Maybe women would be like, oh, let me be like that girl instead of Cardi B or whoever.
But and also women can also look at more statistics and see what types of women are actually getting married, because I don't think we're going to take away that attachment to like BBLs and stuff like it. It's fun. Like it is fun seeing women that look beautiful and that you can have an imagination with. That is, I don't think there's necessarily anything that's wrong with that. But when we start applying that to real life, like we start to go kind of haywire with the expectations that some men can have of women, the men that are on the extreme side. And also with women too, because there's also I think the women that are like really out of shape to the point where it's unhealthy, and yet they are causing a stir saying you need to love me as I am, or love me just the way I come. They cause problems for a lot of the average women too. So I think we just exist inside so many extremes that just look who's actually getting married. There's very plain looking people are getting married.
Yeah, but
Yeah, to each other. But the problem is
messed over. The good girls really do be getting messed over, and then the girls that are not getting married, at least they're getting something out of it, like a bag vacation, house, cars, and then you're like, man, I'm over here being a good girl, and I keep getting messed over, cheated on, left. I'm tired. I'm gonna go get this BBL.
The good girls are getting. The good girls are getting passed over, but so are the young guys that are good. So
because the young guys don't want the good girls either.
But
no,
everybody wants opposite.
Not just that, right? I think because earlier I was saying we like to conflate things because that it makes things easier. Attention is not love. Attention is not respect. attention does not necessarily mean a healthy relationship. So I think when we stop overvaluing attention and start valuing somebody who values us, we start to look at that differently, because how many likes a girl has because of her body, or how many of those girls are in a guy's following, start to look different when you understand what Nelson is saying of like, I like this, I can give this attention. I don't have any value. I don't see the value in it past pleasure, right? And just taking a quick peek at the chat whenever we were talking about the BBLs, it seemed like a lot of the men in the chat were aligning with that too, right? Like attention and value are not the same thing. And so the second that women stop equating one to the other, I don't know that so many girls would feel passed up.
I want to just say, because we're going to talk about the stats. The stats are only 48% of men have married. So if all these guys were married and you were just left over, that will make so much sense. You know, so it don't like they marrying anybody. The good girl, the bad girl, the booty girl, they ain't marrying nobody. So let's please keep that in mind, okay? But then when you're I actually had a guy. We talked about marriage, okay, and he made it very clear that he is expecting that body to stay the way it is. Like these came out of his mouth. This came out of his mouth. Look, and Tara mistaken knows who I'm talking about. He places a lot of, and it's not that. I mean, he's a great guy, but he makes it very clear that.
Well, he better stay the same way too, because a lot of them be having.
He just felt like as long as
that's a character thing too.
Saying all of this, they be having pot bellies and fading hairlines and stuff, and we gotta look at you with your bald spot and stuff, and you and
he tell they be non-existent hairlines.
But also think that's what he cares about too. So if he married you because of your certain level of fitness, and then once you get comfortable inside the marriage, you start letting things go, you start walking past them and just farting and burping all over the place and being your authentic self, that's when the problems start coming out.
You can't be yourself. When women naturally pass gas, I don't know why men act like that don't exist. Like we don't do that.
But you also
went to a hospital. She went to the hospital because she was holding on her farts for so long around her man that it sent her to the hospital. She should have just
went to the bathroom and go and let that out.
So B Taylor,
go to the bathroom.
So B Taylor, I think we like apples and apples, right? Because if a man is really generous at the beginning of a relationship and then he gets married and starts to become really frugal, that becomes problematic, right? And I think society values women based on their aesthetic, and it values men based on their productivity, right? So I think a lot of times we're taught in a relationship, you got to stay the same in order to maintain the relationship. We're not taught how to value the actual human being and be able to grow together, right? And so we force people to stay the same. And I think this probably goes a lot to why divorce rates are also so high, that when one of the people changes and grows, or people change and grow in a way where they're not still connected, we don't value each other the same way anymore, because the thing that we valued, not the person that we valued, has now morphed out of what we continue to value, right? So yes, we could talk about men and their receding hairlines and their pot bellies, but if that man earns enough, there will always be beautiful women that are willing to make that compromise.
Is it all about money? Like, is it all about money? I see women literally will leave a good relationship with a man that may not make all this money, but he's a family man, he's a good man. But then they go and say, well, this man is selling me a dream and he got money. Now women are saying, you know what, I deserve better than this.
Well, it's the 80-20, right? The 80-20 rule, where you find somebody who has 80% of what you want, and you think that 20% is going to complete you to 100, but really you're losing 60% as you move over to the 20. And I think a lot of people haven't learned that math. And so we continue to focus on the thing that we value the most. And yes, not every woman is solely financially based, right? Because we see those relationships fall apart too. However, there are enough women out there who are solely financially focused that they're willing to make compromises that other women may not.
Yeah,
Same
that's
thing with men, right?
This is a
Men
business,
talk about
remember?
how they want women to be their piece, but if that woman is beautiful enough, there are men out there who are willing to sacrifice their piece to be with this specific woman, right? So
For a
it
time period.
right. And so I think that people follow what they value, and that 80-20 rule kind of comes into play too. And it's just things are messy and fun.
okay. All right, guys. So I don't want to keep y'all any longer. So we're gonna give our final thoughts. If you want to give your final thoughts and a solution to either or video about bad pee management, women with the first video, or body dysmorphia in the community. We'll start with Monet. I'll start with you.
I have the same solution that I've had in many other episodes, and it's going to continue on for this episode and episodes to come. Women, close your legs to a man who's not married to you, who does not want to take responsibility for you, who doesn't even look at you as being his wife.
Inaz.
I love that advice. I will also say, like, know yourself, understand yourself, respect yourself, value yourself, and that will allow you to make the types of decisions that Shan was talking about.
Mistaken.
Inaz already took what I was going to say. It's more about, spend more time getting to know who you are. So then when you meet your mate or what you're looking for, that you are, in alignment. That's all. But a little bit what Nelson said, if you got to fart, go ahead and fart. Be your authentic self so that person can see 100% what they're getting.
Nelson looking like go to the bathroom. Oh my God, curse for life.
Don't alter your body for no reason. Learn to love yourself the way you are. There is always somebody who is going to love you just the way you are. Now, if you want to change for your own, however that may be, I would just say do it the natural way. And that's all I have.
Do you want to get those super chats? There was some more that came in real fast.
Okay, yeah, because I want to save Nelson for last, of course, because I know he's gonna close it out with a good one.
Yeah.
Let's see. Is this one? Nothing wrong with being Congo English with a 5-piece. Nothing wrong with being polite when asking grown women questions. Jeez. Hink the basement. Women love living a lie. Ashay
Shane is very angry, y'all.
Man.
You can always tell the angry people.
Yeah,
They
it's
send
okay.
money with anger.
You could go to bed.
Y'all leave Hink alone.
He can go to bed after this, but thank you for the 2 pieces. Ashay Linux, the hobbyist, false advertisement. Buyers beware. Oh, he's talking about the
that booty. Yes. I don't know what that was. That was like wax.
Oh Lord, let's see. Sean Melvin, white women want to take your hood, black men, Hispanic women.
Oh, that wasn't a super chat. I wanted to go back to that, but let's just take it down. We'll talk about that another time.
Okay, we'll talk about that another time. I'll go and then I'll wait. Okay, I'll go and then I'll let Nelson go. My advice would be is that don't give a man your womb, because that's the most precious thing you can give him. Let him give you his last name first so you can give your children's that honor. You don't have to debate about him switching up on you during the pregnancy, because these motherfuckers switch up. Okay. They do. Once you get pregnant, they get comfortable. They get comfortable. They'll switch up on you because they got you. They got you in a vulnerable spot, and they can leave and come back and know you're waiting on them because you want your family. So, ladies, protect your womb. Don't believe what he's saying. Believe what he's actually doing. Okay. If he's moving and he's inconsistent with you, don't think that he's going to be consistent when a child is in the picture. If y'all having relationship issues now and you think a baby's going to solve them, a baby will just only make it 10 times bigger than what it is. You're going to grow up. You're going to see him for who he really is. And you're going to be a single mom. And it's not ideal. You can make the best of your situation if you do, but it's not an ideal situation. So please protect yourself, stand up for yourself, say no. It's okay if he leaves because you want to wear protection or be abstinent, let him leave. He's not for you. He did not have good intentions. And I think being abstinent or being what is it?
Celibate.
Celibate, yes. If you're being celibate pushes men away, that only means that the bad men are scattering out of the way for the good man. As for the BBL thing, ladies, love your body, go to the gym, work out, change it up. Don't need to lay on a hospital table and bed to alter your body because we don't know how this is going to look in the next 20 years. And you don't want to be a 50-year-old woman carrying around a big old sag of load on your back. All right.
looking like Bugs Life.
Looking like Bugs Life at 50 years old.
Skinny legs and the big ass booties.
And be hurting because gravity is real. And your butt is going to sag. Okay.
My thing is, what will happen when those aren't in style no more?
If the good Lord didn't bless you with it, that means you don't have the back muscles to properly carry that ass.
You can get that removed.
They don't got the money. They don't have the money.
They're not the same where the women were getting shooting it up with the stuff. Now they're like, I don't know, kind of like breast implants.
A lot of them are already getting on credit. I seen a 50-year-old woman with a BBL, and let me tell you, it did not look right. She was working at Sam's Club. Okay, it didn't get her nowhere. She was working at Sam's Club with that BBL, and it didn't look
right. Boy, you don't know, baby. It's stop, boy.
All right, Nelson, go ahead and close us out with a good one, and I'll wrap it up for everyone.
I would say change the way that you approach dating. Focus on really learn each other's thoughts, feelings, behaviors, and core motivations in everything that they do. Learn it both ways. Learn for the man and for the woman. You can take sex off the table because it's a skill. So when two people that are on the same page mentally and know each other's family history, know each other's mental health history, and you know what each other looks like transparently, then you are more likely to have a successful relationship where you can learn each other's bodies the correct way and then have great sex and then really enjoy one another. So for the men, be who you are in the beginning. Don't change up. Like, let your character show. For the women, keep it consistent. If you are a person that if you got some tomboyish ways where you like to fart and burp, make it known in the beginning, because the last thing you want is when you are 2 or 3 years into the marriage, he looking at you like you're nasty and trifling and not looking at you like you're feminine anymore. And so I'm not saying that it's bad that you do it, but I'm just saying don't put on a fake persona in order to get this person and just to find out he doesn't like what's under the hood later on.
Period. All right. Thank you.
He's saying fart straight out the gate.
No. Just have a conversation. Have a conversation.
Hey, y'all, this is a real story, real fast. It's a nasty story. I have a girlfriend. I'm sorry. I have a girlfriend who went to her guy's house. It was the first day, y'all. I kid you not. And she was on antibiotics and she drank wine. And it just was both ends at this man's house. He proposed to her 3 months later.
Oh my God.
She was so embarrassed on the bed. It was like, couldn't even get there.
You see his face? He is 50 shades of disgusted right now. You see his face? He said, how could you?
As long as you,
this is a true story, y'all.
As long as you know what you're going to get. That's all I'm saying.
But that is
later. He must have loved that shit.
No, yeah. The exception. That's not the rule.
For him, that could be being authentic. Like he saw her authentically in her most vulnerable moment. So it's fine.
She's like, I kept apologizing. I just couldn't. It was just
I would have had to leave. That's when you
didn't know which one was more important.
Nah,
It
you gotta
works.
call your friend and be like, you need to text your friend and be like, call me like it's an emergency. I need to get the fuck up out of here. I'm letting you
It
like a
goes
hand
faster
grenade.
than that. When if you've ever taken medicine like an antibiotic with,
And I haven't,
it doesn't
Nikki, but
give
I
you
would've
that
made an
time
exit.
to just react. It just is like, it's just not. Don't
Can't
do
even
it.
run to the bathroom, just
I didn't
slipping
know
out.
that.
All right. Thank you, ladies, so much for joining. Nelson, thank you so much. We look forward to you. We want to extend an invite for you to come back to the Lapeef Jr. to the Solution, maybe even She Critique on Friday nights. We appreciate you being here. You gave us a great insight. A lot of people want a man on the panel, and what better way than bring a healthy Black man on this panel?
Drop your info in the back
Emphasis
chat.
on healthy.
Emphasis on healthy, as in he is a licensed therapist. He does counseling. Okay, so we appreciate all of your insight. I'm pretty sure our chat as well, even though they've been giving us a lot tonight. So that's it for the Golden Girls. Hey.
Thank you for being. I'm gonna close this out. Thank you for being a friend. Never on the road and back again. Your heart is true. Your
Hey.
smile and a confidant.
Hey. Bye, y'all.